Motion on the notice. We have
County Board of Supervisors, June 20th meeting notice and agenda was posted in the Government Center building in 2 places. Posted on the county website on June 12th, 2023, and was published in a legal newspaper the week of June 8th, 2023, the published date of June 15th. In addition, on Friday, June 9th, 2023, at 4:44 p.m., the Office of the County Clerk distributed copies of such notice of meeting to supervisors and media via email or mail.
Counselor,
Complies with the open meetings law.
okay. Roll call.
Brad Olson,
Here.
Doug Rowdy,
Here.
Steve Wornall,
Here.
Ryan Wood,
Here.
Tracy LeBlanc, here, Dan Ruck,
Here.
Barbara McAfee,
Here.
Sharon Kelly,
Here.
Kim O'Connell,
Here.
Amy Middleton,
Here.
Jay Luke,
Here.
Denise Lallier Prey.
Here.
Russ Arkand,
Here.
CJ Simmons,
Here.
John Bonaprise.
Here.
All 15 supervisors are here.
Okay, with the pledge of allegiance. Pledge of allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Need a motion on the agenda.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the agenda, and I would like 8A, be a presentation to former supervisor and chair Larry Jepson. We have his daughter and I believe granddaughter here, and they have another commitment. So if we could make that change and we'll move for approval.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve the agenda with the change. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. All right. We will then have, will you make the presentation? This
Thank you,
time?
Mr. Chair. My name is Mo Norby. I'm the Public Works Director, Highway Commissioner. I'd like to invite Jennifer and Allison up, Larry Jepson's daughter. This was a resolution, memorial resolution done at the County Highway Association in honor of Larry Jepson, and I'll just read this for the family. Whereas Larry Jepson has served the citizens of Polk County with dedication, distinction, and the honor for many years. And whereas Mr. Jepson has served on the Polk County Board of Supervisors and has served on the Health and Human Services Committee and the Public Safety and Highway Committee and as County Board Chair. And whereas Mr. Jepson has served the residents of Polk County for 22 years from 1998 to 2020. Whereas Mr. Jepson's service to Polk County have been the utmost dedication and effort to make Polk County a better place to live and work. Now therefore be it resolved that the Wisconsin County Highway Association assembled on the 25th day of January 2023 does hereby honor Larry Jepson for his many years of public service in county government and express our gratitude for his efforts on behalf of the highway interests. Be it resolved that a copy of this resolution be forwarded to Mr. Jepson's family. Just want to thank Larry for all he did for our county and stuff. Thank you very much. I don't know if you want to say anything or.
Well, thanks, Mo. That's, he was quite an asset, I'll tell you that. We all agree with that.
Couple of new folks, can I make a comment about?
Go ahead.
I've known Larry. He's lived in Osceola, and he's had he and Jackie, they own that Motion Trophies. And I never met a more dedicated veteran in all my life. I was in the shop one day picking up about 100 trophies that he was that he made for the high school kids for the FFA tractor pull. Larry just happened to turn a little bit like that, and his hip, I think that was the second time, and he went down on the floor. Jackie and I picked him up, and boy, we said some prayers that he'd recover from that, and he did. And Larry he just never stopped doing things for the public. He was the head of the West Cap for many years. He did a lot for all over the people of the state of Wisconsin. 2 years, I think 2 years ago, we dedicated this war memorial, Veterans Memorial in Osceola. And he had worked on that for at least 20 years, and they had several different sites. And he finally got the site donated, and they got it done, and it's beautiful. There's just not enough people. He was the one and only. So thanks to your family.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, can I just add also, my name is Amy Middleton and I took over Larry's spot. And I just was always struck by how kind he was. He was just so wonderful, welcoming me and kind of helping me understand a few of the ropes, and he checked back with me a couple times. So I've always appreciated your dad in that regard. So thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else like to make a comment? Thanks.
Thank
Thanks a
you.
lot.
Thanks, girls.
There. All right, we have matters offered for adoption on the consent agenda. Need a motion?
A motion to approve A, B, and C.
I'll second it.
Motion made and seconded. Discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Public comments being controlled by the upstairs conference room. I don't know who's running the show, but
Don't we usually
they'll
have
be
somebody-
restricted to 3 minutes. Who's up there? You know?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Well, good evening, members of the board. First, I'd like to express my sincere appreciation to all of you and thanks for all that you do for the people of Polk County. I know that it's not always easy to make decisions that affect people's livelihood, and especially when there are conflicting and competing interests. So once again, I appreciate all your work on this. Tonight, as you consider all the options and hear many comments and opinions regarding the Gandy Dancer Trail usage, I ask that you also perform the necessary due diligence and make yourself fully aware of the facts before you make a decision. You have a lot of good information available to you. The recent Gandy feasibility study, among others, provides you with a lot of factual data that recommends that you leave the Gandy alone. There are also many studies that confirm that mixed use trail does not work. Bikes scare the majority of horses, and recreating in close proximity to each other comes with some serious risks. Polk County would be better off keeping these users separate and focus on improving the Gandy for hiking and biking rather than diminish its use. Please consider that all of you serving on the board primarily represent we, the people that live here in Polk County. We are your constituents, and we look to you to fairly represent our needs. Polk County proudly boasts wonderful recreational resources that many people currently enjoy using, like the Gandy Dancer Trail. And these resources are finite. Without your protection, they will eventually be gone. So I simply ask you that you make an informed and well thought out decision based on the facts rather than emotions when you decide if it should be necessary to change the use of the Gandy Dancer Trail. It's incumbent upon you, the board members, to make a decision that will benefit the people of Polk County in both the short and the long term. And we all trust that you will do that. Thank you very much for considering my comments.
We have
Yep.
public comment.
Yep, I'm Doug Thompson. I'm from Osceola.
Okay, got it. We have more than one issue that wish to make comments apparently this evening, but so we'd like to alternate them if possible.
Yep, we have the girls alternating between the different
Got it
topics.
lined up
Yep.
and they're
Yep.
bringing them in one at a time.
Yep.
Okay. All right, keep going. We're gonna limit it to 30 minutes.
Hello, I'm Terry Gwinella from Garfield. I'm rising to oppose the address changes. It seems like a make work project to me, since you have applications like Google Maps and WAS and other things that work just fine in finding our addresses. I don't understand why you'd want to break that system. Thank you for your consideration.
Hi, my name is Jackie Coombe, and I am a member of the Western Wisconsin Realtors Association, and Polk County falls within our jurisdictional area. I am here to kind of invite you. We are not on the agenda. We hope to be on the agenda hopefully next month, or at least open the door for some communication regarding the short-term rental ordinance. Unquestionably, the Polk County ordinance infringes upon individual property rights by enacting an ordinance limiting short-term rentals to no more than 7 days per month within the months of May through September. The county's ordinance violates the Wisconsin's right to rent law. I'm sure you all know the statute number. And as realtors, we applaud the Wisconsin Realtors Association for their litigation of this matter and are confident in the court will determine the ordinance violates the Wisconsin statute. To say that we don't have standing is just not accurate. We have standing because we are members of the industry to be a realtor. We are proud to be a realtor. And we have standing because we represent all of the homeowners and tenants that occupy their property in the entire state of Wisconsin. This is not just a blip on this, county map that this is what Polk County wants to do. You guys are getting a bad name. People don't want to come here. They don't want to move here. They don't want to buy here. And at the end of the day, it's going to hurt you. So please take some time to review the ordinance and invite us to your next meeting. Thank you. I'm from Star Prairie Township.
Good evening. My name is Amanda Wickland. I'm from Milltown. I serve on the Friends of Gandy State Trail Board of Directors. I joined this registered nonprofit organization because the Gandy has played an integral role in my life, especially as a parent. My kids have had many firsts on the trail, first bike rides, first half-century bike rides, first geocaching experiences, first prom pictures, first black bear sightings, and more. I'm proud of being a part of this organization because of the professional and positive ways we're able to serve our community by protecting, enhancing, and promoting this trail. We strive to help residents and tourists learn about and utilize the wonderful gem that runs through the backbone of our county. One of our avenues for achieving this is through programming. For example, my oldest daughter, Annika, serves as a youth ambassador, leading programs like Book and Bike, which puts kids on the trail, biking between libraries, outdoor inspired craft projects like rock painting to encourage young people to get outside and safely enjoy this beautiful resource. Friends of Gandy also takes pride in acting as stewards of the trail, organizing trash cleanups, helping clear store damage, planting trees, surveying the trail to report areas in need of repair or attention. And we're always on the lookout for ways we can contribute to and enhance the trail experience and accessibility. Recent projects have included installing bike repair stations, designing and implementing informational kiosks to promote local businesses, and providing bicycles to local libraries and more. One of our most important missions is a project that we're especially proud of. Tonight, I'd like to share with you the video that highlights the magic that Gandy has to offer. We share this with you because this video is also shared with area tourism centers. It's shared with our friends at the Wisconsin DNR, the Office of Outdoor Recreation, the Wisconsin Department of Tourism. Thank you for listening and enjoy our video.
The Gandy Dancer State Trail. Located Located just 60 miles northeast of the Twin Cities, the Gandy Dancer is the destination for outdoor adventure. At 47 miles long, the southern segment of Wisconsin's Gandy Dancer State Trail is a treasured amenity for any nature enthusiast. Quality hard-packed limestone surface makes the perfect path for a walk, run, hike, or bike. Try your hand at Gandy Bingo and geocache along the way. There's truly something for everyone on the Gandy. Let the fun continue off the trail in the vibrant communities of Danbury, Webster, Siren, Lewis, Frederick, Luck, Milltown, Centuria, and St. Croix Falls, each with their own unique sites of interest and services to enjoy. For helpful information and a map of destinations, grab a pocket-sized trail map. Hit the trail and explore all the beauty of northwestern Wisconsin. With lively woods, pristine lakes, and picturesque bridges, the Gandy is ever-changing. There's a new experience in store every time you visit. The time for adventure is always. So let's hit the trail. We'll see you there.
Good evening, Board. My name is Terry Howard. I'm the Executive Director of the Polk County Economic Development Corporation. I am here to speak in favor of the resolution before you tonight to develop a municipal housing partnership program, Resolution 28-23. Polk County participated in the 2020 countywide housing study that included almost all Polk County villages and cities. In a nutshell, it concluded we have a significant shortage of housing to meet the demands and needs of many different age groups. Overall, Polk County will need 3,765 units built by 2040. And although there are some great projects, either proposed or in development at various parts of our county, the demand is still far greater than the supply. As part of the year-long housing study that we participated in, the professional recommendation of the West Central Wisconsin Regional Planning Commission for Polk County communities to excel is to, number one, proactively engage developers in a clear, simple, and creative manner that demonstrates the demand and your support. Two, be a partner, not a regulator. And three, share in the risk builders and developers are taking in your community. This resolution tonight supports all three of those initiatives. You don't have to look forward than some of our own school districts to understand the severity and impact of housing deficiency. The Osceola School Board, one of our county's most populous areas, recently announced that they will see a declining enrollment over the next 5 years. Declining school enrollment is in any community. It is a problematic indicator of economic instability and lack of growth. It is truly the canary in the coal mine. Lack of children equals lack of young families. Lack of young families equals lack of workers and residents. Lack of workers and residents means businesses closing and people moving and working in areas that have sufficient housing. I am proud to represent Polk County economic development efforts. Your vision for broadband and other economic initiatives have put us ahead of many of our surrounding counties. This resolution will provide us another tool in the toolbox to attract people and industry to our area. And more importantly, stay in our area. Your vote in favor of this resolution will be another great distinguishing characteristic that puts Polk County ahead of other counties for housing development across all age groups. The Polk County Economic Development Corporation and the many local employers we represent support this resolution. Adequate housing will ensure the workforce needed so that our businesses can grow and in some cases even call Polk County their headquarters. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Nancy Moe. I'm from Siren. I think one of the things that Friends of Gandy Dancer does well, or very well, is to promote the trail. And you've just seen our beautiful video, although I probably was buffering more than it should have been to see it well. So you've also seen our maps. We've had these maps all over the county. As a matter of fact, we've printed 5,000, and all of our distribution sites have already, we had to print an additional 5,000 because we've used the first 5,000. They're all gone. And so now we are also doing this summer. We are also promoting our famous bingo, Gandy Bingo. We have. Woo, this is really hard to do with a speaker holder thing in your hand. So we have Gandy Bingo cards this year. As a matter of fact, we've printed another 2,000 this year, and there are 3 different levels of cards available. Any age group can play. We're seeing entire families on the trail looking at items and discovering the trail in new ways. All they have to do is complete a row. You know how bingo works, and you win. Winning is an ice cream cone, and that is provided by generous vendors that partner with us in Milltown, Siren, and Webster. Have you seen the trishaws? You got a chance to see them on the video if you haven't seen them in Luck. The program Cycling Without Age through United Pioneer Home allows elders to get back the joy of bicycling. Volunteers called pilots sign up for trishaws rides with the elders. It's time for the pilot and elder to have a conversation and enjoy nature on the trail. Who knows, maybe they'll play Gandy Bingo. We're always trying to find new ways to promote the trail. This year, we developed card rack and a large vertical banners that are being displayed in the tourism centers. You can see the card racks have a QR code on them. This allows people to scan the code and get access to information on their phones. This summer, we're helping the highway department develop kiosks for each trailhead. Kiosks serve as a tool to welcome trail users and provide them with information they need to explore the town and surrounding areas. Our kiosks will showcase the history of the trail and the history of each town. Lastly, we look forward to a time when the trail stops being in conflict and energy can be spent on improvements to amenities and promoting communities. We look forward to a time that we can collaborate together for safe and healthy ways to promote this trail and communities around it. Friends of Gandy Dancer encourage you to leave the trail as it is.
Hi, my name is Steve Pearson, Oakland Township, and I'm a board member of Friends of the Gandy. Thanks for listening today and thanks for your service to the county. I've been biking and hiking the Gandy Trail for more than 25 years. Back in 2001, my wife celebrated her 50th birthday by hiking 50 kilometers on the Gandy from Luck to Danbury with some friends. When I need a quiet place to get away from traffic noises and all of the distractions of modern life, I get my bike out and take a ride on the Gandy. Riding on my bike on the trail is always a good experience, but 2 days last summer with my 8-year-old grandson were really special. Cameron got his first bike when he was 6, but by the time he had turned 8, he'd pretty much given up on learning to ride after a couple of scrapes on the asphalt. One morning last August, I talked him into giving it another try on the same stretch of road, but I'll be darned if as soon as he got out there, a car came up behind him. He swerved to the left first, looking back over his shoulder, and then swerved back to the right, overcompensating, and ended up taking a hard fall on the road. His tears told me we were done for the day, but I hoped he wouldn't give up. I wouldn't see him for another week, but somewhere during that time, the idea of trying again, this time on the Gandy, came to me. No cars and no asphalt, which meant a softer landing if he did fall over. When he arrived at our house a week later, it took a little coaxing, but the promise of ice cream at the halfway point won the day. He was cautious at first, riding 50 yards or so and then stopping. But by the time we reached the high bridge over the Yellow River, he'd become comfortable enough to keep moving forward for a few minutes at a time. After an ice cream cone at the log cabin store, we headed south again, and he rode back to our starting point, this time without stopping. He was as proud as he could be, and I was pretty darn happy. The following week, when I suggested heading the opposite direction on the trail, he was all in even before I mentioned the ice cream at the halfway point. In just a couple short weeks, he'd become a full-fledged bike rider, and like his papa, a lover of the Gandy Dancer Trail. Over the next couple of weeks, I told several people with what had happened with Cam and me, and I was surprised to learn of other kids who had learned to ride their bikes on the trail. The Gandy is a special place for kids and adults. There's nothing else like it in the two-county area. In fact, nothing else like it in northwestern Wisconsin. A quiet, natural, safe space for people-powered activities. Your northern neighbors in Burnett County have no plans to change any of that. With the activities our group has planned for the coming months, it should be a pretty busy time on the trail. Leaving it as it is, in unison with Burnett County, will keep the trail the go-to place for bikers, hikers, walkers, runners, strollers, and taking your dog for a walk, as well as teaching young kids how to ride a bike without fear of cars. So, hope you'll spread the word, and thanks for listening.
Hello, I'm Pauletta Dare. My husband and I own Luck Saddlery and Outfitters in Luck, and that's where we live. We are here representing the Northwest Wisconsin Equestrian Friends Network to advocate for opening the Gandy Dancer Trail to equestrians. As a sign of our group's commitment, we have entered into a MOU, an agreement with Polk County, to assist with equestrian trail projects, maintenance, and promotions. So much time and resources have been invested in this effort to share our trails and improve our quality of life. This not only includes recent investments in studies and plans, but also those that have spanned many years. We have come so far and made so much progress to not proceed. We are asking the board to please open the master plan and let us ride. Thank you all for your hard work and commitment. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. My name is Stephanie Lundeen. I'm from Bone Lake Township in Frederick. And I'm on the Friends of Gandy Dancer State Trail Board. And I'm not making my own comments tonight. I'm actually letting you know that our organization was contacted in May by an area equestrian user by the name of Lindsay Nichols. And she submitted an email to you all on June 6th, but she also wanted it read out loud for the public record. And she asked for one of us board members to read it tonight because she's not able to be here. A little bit about Lindsay. She's a horse owner of 20+ years and lives approximately 3 miles from the Gandy Dancer Trail in Centuria. She rides between 5 and 50 miles each week and competes in endurance races. Lindsay would not use the Gandy for riding her horse for the following reasons. She says that the Gandy does not have the appeal of other trail systems that rival in its area that are already set up for horses, such as Governor Knowles, which has 50 miles of trails, loops of every size to cater for the beginner, intermediate, and experienced rider. She says, why would I want to ride a straight line like the Gandy when she can ride something that has views, pine glades, beautiful soft footing, huge variety, climbs and winding and intriguing trails. Governor Knowles has already invested in the huge amount of infrastructure to attract the equestrian groups. It has manure pits, water supplies, high lines, hitching posts, and plentiful parking. She goes on to say that the Gandy's not as safe as these other places to ride. It's not safe because she also is a cyclist and she knows that bikes and kids on bikes and people that hike with their dogs are dangerous to people on their horses. Many dogs go into prey mode and attack horses, leading to injury of the dog, horse, rider, or dog owner. Kids are unpredictable and dart around, running and on their bikes. They don't know horse safety and how to approach horses correctly, which could, again, lead to injury. This would be compounded further by inexperienced horse riders or youth riders who don't yet know how to predict a horse's reaction or control a horse in an adverse situation. There are much safer trails at Governor Knowles or Wild River State Park or Balsam Branch trails. She worries greatly on the Gandy about loose horses running across roads or getting hit and endangering motorists. She knows that riding her horse would ruin trails for others. Horses, because of their weight and because of the messes that they make and the churning up of the trail with their hooves, would create a dangerous and poor trail conditions for the Gandy dancer. Lindsay feels it's a huge waste of money for the county to spend for very little return. She honestly believes that equestrians that will use the trail won't be beyond a handful of local residents and will not be a tourist destination. So with that said, I've pretty much summarized her comments. Thank you so much.
And hear you. Wait, I think he turned it off. He turned it off.
Okay.
There you go.
Thanks for the opportunity to tell you why I think the smart thing to do is to make no change in permissible uses of the Gandy. I believe that if you embark on a process of opening up the Gandy to other uses, you're opening a can of worms that's going to be very lengthy and very expensive, and more lengthy and more expensive than you might anticipate. A primary concern I have is one of safety of mixing horses with people on the Gandy. And I think some of the materials from your consultant and from the horse advocates make that case. I note that alternative C is one that's before you this evening, which contemplates horses and bikes and pedestrians sharing the Gandy. But a couple of things that I note from alternative C in your consultant's report is that that approach, quote, is the lowest safety for existing users. And in that regard, I read
We lose them?
Yeah, we can't hear you anymore.
why not? You hear me now?
Yes.
Good. Bicyclists may not realize that bicycles are swift, silent, and low to the ground in ways that resemble natural predators to a horse. Thus, they can trigger a flight response in a horse that may override even years of excellent training. Number of other places in these materials that were submitted are replete with, you have to be very, very cautious in mixing horses with people on a trail like this. I'd also note that the alternative C that contemplates joint use says this. With respect to alternative C, it says, and this is your consultant's report, assumes constructing an adjacent path for equestrians plus a buffer from the existing multi-use trail. Well, and then it goes on to say that the cost is $10,000 per mile and $100,000 overall. But just what does the consultant mean by constructing an adjacent path? And what would that buffer be? I've heard that perhaps the buffer would be turf. Well, you've got to be kidding me. I used to work on a section crew for the Great Northern. I know what railroads are made of. That's all ballast. That's all rock. Nobody's going to be able to grow turf on the Gandy Dancer Trail unless they go in there, make deep gouges into it, put some dirt into it, and plant it. And in the meantime, nobody'd be able to use that trail. Also, it contemplates a trail that's 15 feet wide. I don't know what you did yesterday afternoon, but here's what I did. I took my pencil and my tape and my notepad, and I drove to Centuria, where County I crosses the Gandy. And I walked 200 yards up to the north, and I measured its width. And then I walked another 100 yards up and measured its width. And then another 100 yards up and measured its width. And each time I measured the width of the crushed limestone path. And then I also measured it, giving some fairly liberal allowance for shoulders. Then I went up to Luck, and where it crosses Butternut Avenue, I did the same thing going south, 200 yards, 300 yards, and 400 yards. And then I went north of Luck, where 260th crosses the trail. Same thing, 3 measurements, each time 2 ways. And then I drove to Frederick, and you get on the trail just on the downtown side of the village maintenance building. And here's what I found. Looking just at the limestone path, its widest point amongst all of those 12 measurements is 13 feet. Its narrowest is 10 feet 7 inches. Average 12 feet. Oh, and a fraction of an inch. And if you let the shoulders be included, and that's as highly variable, but the widest is 21 feet and the narrowest is 13 feet and the average is 13 feet 2 inches. None of these show a limestone path that's 15 feet wide. If you start taking that average.
You're gonna have to limit your time. You're running
Okay,
over.
well, you get the point. If you're gonna build buffer zones and then a path for horses and then a path for pedestrians, you're asking for trouble. And sometimes somebody's gonna get hurt. And when you've got a report before you.
Half of an hour or two has been limited, so we're done with.
Okay, well, thanks for listening.
You're welcome. All right. Moving on, we're going on to consider resolutions and ordinances requiring action. We've already handled the Jepson one. We need resolution A motion on resolution 2723 supporting the restitution court.
Motion to approve. Second.
Motion made and seconded to approve. Any comment on that resolution or questions?
I think it's worthwhile. I mean, I personally am in the middle of experiencing this. And when the court orders the person to do something, pay restitution or write a letter apologizing or whatever, they all know that nothing ever happens to them if they don't do it. So it's not worth the words coming out of the judge's mouth because nothing ever happens.
And this is showing support for it, right?
Yeah.
Any other comments? All in favor of the resolution, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Pardon?
That was Denise on the.
She said aye.
Oh, nice to see you. Resolution 2823 on housing.
Adoption.
Oh,
I make a motion, we approve resolution 2823.
motion made
Second.
and seconded. Any discussion on that resolution?
I have a couple things.
Go ahead.
I understood we were gonna get some kind of presentation so we understand where the money goes, who gets it, how we're gonna determine who gets it. Has that been done at committee level or, you know, I don't get this housing thing. I mean, we're gonna get in bed with somebody on it. And who is it?
Mr. Chair, I could address that question.
Okay, go ahead.
So I think the previous housing resolution that was proposed, which had a similar name, had the idea of actually creating the program. All this resolution is doing is saying, hey, county board is asking the administrator to work with folks to come up with an idea that you can either pass or not pass in the future. That's all it's doing. So it's taking a step back and giving staff the time to get to those details so you can have that information.
I just couldn't live with not understanding what's
Absolutely.
going on.
I think
And
that's,
obviously I don't.
yeah, that's why I think.
There's some money
it was
invested
shifted.
here, talked about here, so that's why.
Right, it would still have to pass at the budget if you guys liked the program that the administrator brought forward. So this is just saying, hey, come up with an idea. Here's sort of the general idea that we want. We're looking at maybe $200,000, but I don't think there's any, well, I know that this resolution doesn't bind the county financially in any way to fund or not fund some program. It's just saying, administrator, please work with interested parties to come up with a program that we can consider through the budget process.
Any other comments? Questions?
I guess my only comment is being ever the beacon of positivity that I am. Just not to look at this as, especially where we've identified supporting housing initiatives as a key part of what the county board is going to do over the next few years. Just keep in mind that most likely this is not, and I'm not saying that we're going to go crazy or anything, but this isn't going to be a one and done, you know, now we wash our hands of that responsibility. Like this is a starting point for solving the issues that we're looking at.
Anyone else? Call the question. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Same sign. Hearing none, we move to a closed session.
Well, we don't need a closed session for purposes of the Stour litigation. That is status quo. We still have no decision from the court. I don't have any update that would necessitate a closed session to discuss the Wisconsin Realtors Association. Other than they filed the complaint, we filed the answer, we complied with discovery, and now it's time for motions. So I say we keep this as an ongoing matter on your next agenda. So if there are updates, we can discuss them. Unless somebody wanted to ask a specific question about either of those litigation topics that would require a closed session, I don't think one's necessary, at least from my vantage point, unless you wanted to ask some questions. So when you say it's status quo on the Stour, it's just nothing, we know nothing about a timeline, a decision period?
I promise if I had anything to tell you, I would tell you. I think the last time we met, the judge had indicated a decision would be forthcoming.
That week? Yeah, okay.
So we're just,
He says that every week.
we're just waiting.
3 years. Anybody else have anything?
And do we know, where's our cost at now? What have we spent on the Gandy, I mean, the Stour lawsuit and staffing time?
It would be speculation on my part, but I could pull that together.
Do you have a ballpark? Is it 10,000? Is it 100,000? 200,000?
Speculation.
Yeah, it's more than 100,000.
So north of 100,000 we're in so far.
Right.
You know off the top of your head, Don?
I haven't had a recent update, but it is over 100,000 last time I looked.
Anything else? Then we will abandon the idea of having a closed session, right? Committee as a whole, we'll call that the order.
There a motion to go into committee of the whole?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second it.
All right, motion made and seconded to committee as a whole. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Discussion regarding resolution 2923.
So I can lead that discussion if you'd like. I believe the clerk circulated an updated packet because there were requests for red line version, so the previous version, you can see the changes, and there are not a lot of changes. It would start on page 16 of the packet that was handed out to you. Wanted to follow along. And this comes from the executive committee, bringing this forward to the full county board because they are the ethics committee. You won't see any changes until you get to page 18. And this specifically addresses under subsection 6, fairness and consistency, the expectations of confidentiality when we have a closed session. So for example, if we would have gone into closed session today about the Realtors Association claim, and I shared with you what we're going to be arguing, it would be inappropriate for one of you to then call the Realtors Association representatives and say, this is what we're going to argue, to give them ammunition against us, maintaining that level of confidentiality, even if you disagree with the policy. So let's say we're in litigation with the Stour, and you're one of the silent sport folks who really want to maintain the Stour, and you have some insider knowledge that you obtained in a closed session, and you go to the other side because it's your own personal policy viewpoint, you would have violate this new change in the ethics code. And it's really important because as elected officials, you're going to be asked by your constituents to take positions that might differ with what the county board ultimately decides to do. And so this would outline your ethical obligation once the county board has made a policy decision to not take information from a closed session in order to try to thwart that policy decision. So that's what that section under B addresses. Under C, this would give sort of a long arm jurisdictional reach for a former supervisor. Let's say they violated the code of ethics the day before they left office because they were upset and they went out with a bang. And we didn't want to, currently the language talks about a supervisor, not a former supervisor. So this would give notice to any sitting supervisor, if this change were to be passed, that, hey, anything you do during the time you're on the board, we can still apply this code to your conduct for a period of 1 year after you've left office. It would clear up some of the confusion that exists with the previous language. Under the next section, political activities, This provided concrete examples of when somebody would violate 6A above. So when you're using your authority or title or position to modify the political activities of another, there was some discussion about, well, if you take out an ad and you say negative things about your opponent, are you using your political position because you say, you know, you're using your position as a supervisor because you feel like you need to share this information? Would that violate? And there were some questions around that. And so putting some concrete examples to make sure everyone understands what would actually violate that section, that's what I added. I recommended being added under sub 7A 1 and 2. And we can hold the questions for the end or ask them as we go. It doesn't bother me, whatever you guys want to do. The next addition is just adding the reference to misconduct in public office. The next red section, the addition, advisory opinions. So any supervisor can ask my office in writing to draft an official advisory opinion to assist the ethics board when they're exercising their duties. And then in the next section, there were a lot of questions when we had a complaint about what is a verified written complaint. And the way I read it and the way I think it was intended originally is now more explained here. A verified complaint is when what's written in the 4 corners of the complaint, if true, would actually violate the ethics code. So if the complaint is, hey, I want to bring an ethics complaint because, you know, Jay Luke plays loud music on Friday nights at his house and he's a supervisor and I think that violates, well, that wouldn't violate this code. So even if you write it down and you had it notarized and you brought it to the ethics committee, we're not going to investigate Jay Luke for the loud music on Friday nights.
Especially if it's after 8 o'clock.
So, I mean, that's obviously an extreme example. So again, it just clears up, well, what do we mean by verified? Does it mean we've done an independent investigation to see if it's really true that Jay Luke plays music late on Fridays? No, it means what's written down, if true, would be a violation of the ethics code. Then there's just some cleanup language at the end.
Let's go back to that 4.
I think that's the last major substantive change. So yeah, any questions?
So it says the ethics board shall forward a copy of the complaint to the accused supervisor and the complaining within 10 days. But you can do it a year later. How does that work? No action can be taken on any complaint which is filed more than a year. So it says you have to do it in 10 days in a year. So how?
No.
Reading that wrong, or how was that?
Yeah, so good question, Supervisor O'Connell. Once the ethics board, i.e. the executive committee, determines, hey, this is a verified complaint. In other words, if true, what this supervisor is alleged to have done would be a violation of this code. Once they've made that decision, then the ethics board has a 10-day window to send that out to the person who's being complained about, the supervisor or former supervisor, and to the complaining party. And I think the intention behind that, and Amy, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, the intention behind that was to make sure that the complainant knew that the complaint had been received and is being acted upon, right?
Yeah, that's right. And it's not 10 days, it's just after 10 days. It can be a year, 6 months out.
No, it says.
No, it's within 10 days.
No, but I mean, the complaint could be 6 months after the person leaves or something, and then it.
Oh, the
still just-
violation, yeah.
The 1 year has to do with when the complaint has to be brought.
Yes, and the 10 days is once the complaint is received, that's how long the
That's just
committee has that,
administrative.
yeah.
So, go ahead.
It still is very clear.
On 6C, what are the rules and remedies if that individual is now off the board?
So depending upon what the violation is, there could be a forfeiture, because this ethics code impacts forfeitures. If it's a violation of misconduct in public office, it could be a referral to the district attorney for prosecution. It could be a public shaming.
have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I just want to make sure that Supervisor Olson, I'm not cutting him off. Did you have more?
No, I thought Supervisor Kelly did, so that, go
Oh, sorry.
ahead.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Chairman Luke, can I just use you as a hypothetical example since you're
Yes,
the
go
current
ahead, as
chair?
long as it doesn't interfere with my bedtime.
Right. So since the hypothetical I'm about to give seems like it's one of the reasons why some of this was visited, I'm going to use Chairman Luke as an example. So if within the next year, before the upcoming election in next April, if he was to take out an ad in the paper and say, I don't like current supervisor, whoever, for this reason, and there's also another candidate who's running for a position, and I don't like them for this reason, and as the county board chair, I feel it's my duty to let the public know this is why I don't like them. According to this, is that on the up and up?
That would not be a verified written complaint because it would not, if everything is true, if Jay did all of those things and said those things, that's not trying to influence the political activity of another using his position. That's why we put the
Is
examples.
voting a political activity?
Then every single political ad would be violating this ethics code. Every single political ad, every time you put up a sign that said, vote for this person, don't vote for that person, you would be violating this ethics code if we took that to its.
But every single political ad doesn't use their current position, they use their candidacy.
Or it says
So like,
incumbent, so if you
for
write
example, Chairman
incumbent.
Luke isn't running against anybody,
Sure.
he's just putting that out there to the world that I don't like this person or this person. And as the chairman, this is why.
Sure.
It seems like an outsized influence. Like, I'm not saying you can't have that opinion and you shouldn't be able to voice your opinion. It's just saying, don't use that seat as your sounding board.
Sure, so if you put on your sign, I am Ryan Wood, I am the incumbent for my district, which implies I'm currently a supervisor. Now, you've just started to use your current position as a supervisor to influence the political activity of others and have them vote in a certain way. Just because he's the chair and says I'm the chair, doesn't mean it applies to him more strictly than it would to any other supervisor. I
I'm saying if it
understand where
doesn't
you're
have to
coming
do
from.
with their race, like it's the other races that he has nothing to do with.
But you have, so if you went door to door in a different district. Hi, I'm Ryan Wood, current supervisor in XYZ, and I'm asking you to vote for my friend here in your district because I think he or she will support X, Y, and Z policies. If that's a violation of this ethics code, then our ethics code probably is in violation of the First Amendment. And I just want, I'm not trying, my personal viewpoints are outside. I'm simply giving you what the legal analysis is. And I gave advice to the executive committee throughout this whole process. And at some point, people thought I was giving bad advice and I was putting the county in jeopardy. And so I reached out to the Wisconsin Counties Association in-house counsel and had them look at everything I advised, including this. And the only mistake that they could find that I made was a misreading of a campaign expenditure for the Republican Party. When it said chairman's letter, I assumed it was a particular letter that went out, and that wasn't. All the rest of the advice, right? You can, you can make a different decision politically and try to hold somebody accountable. That would likely open you up personally to a 1983 action for trying to squelch free speech.
I think that's not what anybody's saying.
Anybody else?
So does it say anything in here? And I've read through it, but I don't see, because the executive committee is.
The ethics board.
Yep. So what if the complaint is against someone on the executive committee? Are they?
Sure. They would have to certainly recuse themselves.
Yeah. Okay. I didn't see that it mentioned that in here, but
That's a valid point. We could certainly add that language so it's clear.
yeah. And then the only thing I'm concerned about is a year later. I mean, a year later. That's a long time to hold, you know, I don't get it with. If something happened and someone wants to complain about it right away. You don't have to wait, so they can wait a year and then file a complaint. And then that former supervisor would be held accountable, right?
Yeah, that's not necessary. I'm not recommending a year.
Yeah.
It was just put in there as a placeholder. You could certainly say something less, like a month. I mean, I don't feel strongly one way or the other. In fact, if I were queen, it would only apply to current sitting supervisors.
Yeah, I don't,
And that was
that's,
discussed because we talked about like, okay, if like Malia said, if somebody walks out on their last day and whatever.
yeah,
It gives somebody a chance to, and it could be a month, it gives somebody a chance to kind of
Yeah.
go, oh, wait. Can't like just throw the Molotov cocktail and walk out the door without any ramifications. So maybe 6 months.
I don't know that, I don't like 6C. I think it's, I don't know, I don't think it belongs in there. I think if there's something that happens, it should be addressed immediately while there's still a supervisor. And once they leave the door, they're a citizen, they can do whatever they want. For the First Amendment, I mean, they can say or do whatever they want.
Yeah, go ahead.
I think the one in, 1 year, 6 months, 1 month, whatever it is, I think the intent of having at least some window of time is perhaps something's not unearthed. Or something gets buried somewhere and it doesn't even manifest itself until after that person is gone. And what that is, I can't even think of a ridiculous Jay Luke example.
Anything is.
He goes to bed too early.
But the point is, I can envision a scenario where, a supervisor may do something maliciously and it doesn't show itself until that person is off the board. And so having some time frame, I think, is an intent to be able to capture that as well. To the extent, like our council was saying, to the extent we feel we have to have some sort of clawback. I think that's the reason for some kind of window.
But just to be clear, it would have to be something they did while they were a supervisor, not they're held accountable as if they were a supervisor for 1 year after. It would only be conduct that was.
Well, I hope this isn't, because all of us here know what this, who we're talking about here and why this is in here. And I just don't think that we should be putting something in our rules based on that. I mean, we can call it out, but we're all talking about Chris Nelson here and what happened when he left. And I don't know that, have we ever had any issues with this before on the board? I don't know. And I'm just, it's kind of like, okay, let's get one more thing in there after Chris. And that's kind of how I feel it is. So I don't agree with 6C.
So what happens if 6C goes into place, a former supervisor, Corporation Council looks at it and says, I think this is a verified complaint, takes it to the ethics board, it gets out there, it's in public, and now boom, all of a sudden something comes up and it's like, whoa, sorry, former supervisor, we know we smeared your name in public, we know we run you through the ringer, but oh yeah, now something came forward and says, it really wasn't wrong. I misinterpreted it, the committee misinterpreted it. What's that former supervisor? What's his remedy for having his or her name? I just wanted the answer. I knew it. I'm not done yet, Jay.
Then the system worked. What do you want there?
So,
What
well,
do you
we're,
want it to be?
we're in committee of whole, so we can't go there yet, but, so let's see. 7C or 7A2, I guess. And maybe this is, maybe I'm off too far, but here we're talking about a sitting supervisor. What if hypothetically, what if a sitting supervisor has to quorum of a committee to vote one way before a hearing? What is the repercussions for something like that?
That would be an open meetings law violation that could be referred to the district attorney's office or the AG's office. It also could be addressed in the ethics code. But let's say there was a company that wanted to put, I don't know, a mine somewhere. And one of the committee members went to the person who wanted to operate the mine and said, hey, you contribute X, Y, Z to this other policy initiative, you know, putting horses on the Gandy Dancer Trail, I will vote for your mine. I mean, that would clearly be a violation of the ethics code.
Mhm.
You have to write that down. That's not very logical.
No, but can some of this be in misconduct in public office, that section? A lot of that's covered, is it?
Our
46.
Yes, our code.
So our catch-all is that right there.
Yep, and our code mirrors the state ethics statute, and it almost all involves financial impropriety. So it's,
Does it mirror the 1 year?
no, that is not it.
So we can do a consensus and say we should pick a time when we get to it, maybe.
Right, you can't act on this until you're out of
Then there's
committee of
something
the
to say
whole.
30 days.
You could send it
40
back to
days.
committee and say, I don't like it, keep working on it. You could say, this all seems pretty good, let me think it over when we're dealing with next county board's rules of order and we're trying to make recommendations. We'll make recommendations then. All of that is on the plate. Whatever you guys want to do.
Because the changes takes 2/3 vote, does it not?
It does not, because this is actually not a part of your rules of order and it's not codified in the county code of ordinances. Bob, am I right about that?
I don't think so. I thought the rules of order have to have 2/3 vote.
Right,
to
this is not a
change.
part of your rules of order.
And what is it?
It's just this
Just the code of
standalone
ethics
code
is
of
not
ethics.
our
that-
rules of order.
No, this was passed a
Ouch.
long time ago as a, just a
Standalone,
thing, yeah.
a thing. It was a thing back then.
Well,
Okay.
that's what they're saying.
All right.
Are we gonna have to act on this?
You don't have to, you can.
What do we have to do to act on it? Change your?
You could either pass the resolution, which makes these changes. You could pass the resolution with an amendment, taking out or modifying certain parts. Or you could say,
Normal-
this all sounds good, let me think about it. Postpone it to a date certain, or you could punt it to when you are addressing the rules of order and then incorporate the ethics into your rules of order for your next board. So for the next election,
So we
Go
can
ahead.
change it or
John,
leave
go
it
ahead.
separate.
correct.
Okay.
What?
This is all new to me. In fact, I didn't even know there was anybody involved in it. And I think that I personally need to study this, and I'm not ready to vote on anything tonight on this.
And again, I think that's why it was in the committee of the whole to sort of, this has been housed just in the executive committee. So maybe you wanted to act on it, but there's no expectation that you're going to act on it tonight. So whatever you guys decide.
There will be no, all of these changes would be liberal.
Right. Just your current, without all the red stuff, would be what you're operating under currently.
Does anybody want to act on this tonight, or should we postpone it so you have a better chance to study it, understand?
Why don't, I would be good moving it.
But you can't
Toward-
act on it after tonight. anyway.
No, I know, but I would be good moving it to when you're doing the rules of order.
It seems logical,
Yeah.
but
That was my thinking. That
Yeah.
was my presentation.
don't do that until you're out of committee of the whole.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay.
And then I have a question, so would that mean that we would change, then our rules of order would have this in addition to it?
It would be, yeah, incorporated into it. which I think is a really good idea.
Yeah, let's vote.
Because it was hard for folks to find this code because it wasn't even like posted as a part of the regular stuff like the rules of order, so.
So basically, we would at a later time now bring this, we'd have a discussion about this later, pin down what we want. Like Chairman Luke said and Supervisor Bonifaz said, educate ourselves more on what's here,
Correct.
what maybe we don't need, maybe what's missing. And then we can come together and say, okay, when we change rules of order, this is what we would like to see.
Yep.
I sure wouldn't vote on it.
But we're gonna be doing that during the, out of this committee as a whole. If we ever do.
Motion to go out of committee of whole.
Hope we're not done.
Yeah, we're not there yet.
Not yet. We're not quite done. We gotta,
Oh, we got other.
we gotta move then to the presentation from SRF regarding the Gandy Dancer feasibility study. Are you ready?
Are you ready? Are you all ready? Good evening.
Born ready.
Born ready. Chairman Luke, before I introduce our guests, our consultants from SRF, it's Isaac and Phil. I just want to provide some context and I'll be really brief.
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Well, this study, it's a feasibility study looking at adding ATVs, UTVs, and equestrians between St. Croix Falls and the Burnett County line. So naturally, you're going to look at the Gandy Dancer State Trail corridor. This project is actually two projects outlined in the Comprehensive Trail Network Plan. That is something that was adopted by County Board and a product, about a year and a half of work from PTAG, in which Supervisor Middleton was co-chair. I know in your packets, I put, if you saw that, this matrix little table there. It's in the back of your packet. I put that in there. That's just a project status update of most of the priority projects within the Comprehensive Trail Network Plan. And this project, back to the feasibility study, which you'll hear about tonight, is both A2 and A3. So those have been combined for a number of different reasons. And as you probably know, funding or resources for implementing a lot of these projects came from proceeds from the land quarry sale. SRF, which is our consultants, staff, as well as the Environmental Services Committee, we've been working on this project since October of 2022. And tonight, both Isaac and Phil are here to present the final results. As you may know, again, a little bit of context, summer ATV use and year-round equestrian use is not allowed on the Gandy Dancer State Trail. Except for one exception, back in 2015, ATVs, UTVs were allowed two special events on the Gandy as per the last time we've amended the master plan. Real quick, our process, this whole planning process, I believe has been really extensive, comprehensive, and inclusive. And I believe you'll see that as through the formal presentation. Also, we have presented to our governing committee, again, Environmental Services Committee, twice, and met with a number of different stakeholder groups, as well as all the municipalities in which the trail intersects. So with that said, Environmental Services Committee has recommended two alternatives. You'll see that tonight. And SRF will further explain those findings. So with that said, any questions?
Is there a cost to this in there outside?
The cost for the study itself, because it was two projects, each E2 and A2, both allocated 40,000. So we had to combine both projects just to elicit interest from the private sector. So yeah, the total sum, the total project cost of this study is or was $80,000. Any other questions?
Where is it?
Thank you, Bob. My name's Phil Johnson. I'm a landscape architect with SRF. Isaac Hayes is also a landscape architect. We had a team of 3 of us with supporting staff that completed this study and working very closely with Bob over the last few months. As Bob mentioned, this is to evaluate the routes for ATV, UTVs, and equestrian for a potential connection between St. Croix Falls and Burnett County. And the Gandy was the corridor that was the focus of this study. The goal was to engage the public, to look at the safety of these improvements, to develop maintenance costs, economic and development impacts, and other factors that may affect whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. So it started out with having a look at 4 options: the shared use of the existing right-of-way, which is 100 feet, the mixed trail right-of-way, road right-of-way, and roadways. So we also looked at the trail in context of the adjacency. So if there was a roadway or a road right-of-way that we could have benefited from in the course of the study, we were to examine that. We also looked at the shared use of the existing trail, which would be whether it's the 13 or 15-foot main corridor of the trail. And finally was to look at parallel routes that may be acquired through land easements or acquisitions. So those are the 4 goals that were set out for us. And this is an important study. I mean, obviously it came off of the network, the county network master plan, comprehensive master plan, where there was a lot of public engagement, and the public engagement was a broad approach and took a lot of valuable input. We reviewed all that. And it also shows how much of a regional destination that Polk County is to so many of these recreational opportunities. And that's actually a very impressive thing to see as we've done this study. We've also tried to be inclusive in how we're doing our engagement, and I'll talk a little bit about that. And all users should be able to have a recreational experience within the county. That was another one of the goals of the study. We looked at for an outcome that we wanted to have things that were opportunities and challenges we looked at, where the burdens would be of having this activity occur in there or not. How we gathered public feedback, user group and impacts. Our final report is to, make a clear representation of our findings and what our recommendations are. So what did we hear? So we started the public engagement process by conducting interviews. The interviews are different than the open houses, where it's a broader type of input. It's more quantitative at that point. When you get down to the study level, you look at more qualitative engagements. And so we conducted interviews, and the interviews were real directed, and we had a engagement time between the different user groups. We had a number of us taking notes. We combined those notes and then we summarized them. So we engaged the existing users, the ATV users, and the equestrian users. We also did some background study with the Wisconsin Trails Council, the group in Madison, and talked to a number of of people with that, to get that perspective included. We also had interviews with St. Croix County, excuse me, St. Croix Falls, Centuria, Milltown, Luck, and Frederick. This was kind of held in abeyance because of its status is kind of different than the other communities. But we did have good exchange with the communities in different formats, but we did get feedback from all of them. Some of the more significant input came from the Wisconsin DNR and the National Park Service. That's kind of where we dug into some of the issues that we found that are most pertinent to this study. We received a lot of position statements. And again, the position statements were really a lot of the advocacies for each of these user groups. Primarily, it was the existing user groups that had the most passion for this and gave us the most input. All very good. I mean, it was very helpful to gather all this information and to summarize it as we move forward. So what we basically heard is that the ATV users wanted an off-road access from St. Croix Falls to Burnett County. Makes sense that the Gandy Dancer would be that. So that's what their ask was. Equestrians desire to have a shorter trail loops along the Gandy Dancer, and an up and back you'd have to consider as a trail loop unless we could have broken off into adjacent properties. But we kind of stayed with staying on the trail in our evaluation. ATV groups also came with additional resources than other groups did. They've got a pretty good way of getting funding through grants through the DNR, and they also would be a component in the maintenance and operations of the trail. So these are inputs that we got from the different users. Existing users largely desire that usage remains the same. That was heard loud and clear. So we heard that. The position statements generally supported that. Some municipalities welcome the positive economic impact. So that was a more balanced feedback that we got, that some of the communities could see the advantages of having expanded use on the Gandy Dancer. But it wasn't, overwhelming in one direction or the other. But there was a good dialogue there relative to that. Businesses, housing developments, and public institutions currently rely on the trail mostly as a non-motorized trail. So we saw a lot of examples of that. You saw that in the video. And the story about learning how to ride a bike on the Gandy Dancer. So there's a lot of passion for, the existing uses to remain the same. There are some businesses that see a bit of benefit from this winter use of snowmobiles on the trail, and they felt that there also would be benefit if the ATVs would also be on the trail. Safety is a common concern and is primarily concerned between non-motorized and motorized uses and between equestrian and cyclists. We heard that on the public comment section as well. ATV and equestrian usage may be perceived as a nuisance, especially in the municipal areas. ATV and equestrian usage may erode the trail surface. And ATV and equestrians may change the character of the trail to the extent that they would displace the existing users. These are the kinds of feedbacks that we are getting, the qualitative feedbacks, I think, that were surely different from one to the other. Equestrians permitted but not preferred on the trail by the Ice Age Trail Association. And also the Ice Age Trail Alliance, I'm sorry. And also they submitted a statement through the National Park Service to that extent. That doesn't prohibit the use of equestrian on the trail, but they did have a preference in their comments to not include that. So what we're going to do is Isaac is going to go over the different study components that we completed give you some background information, talk about the legislative findings that we had that really set the direction for the study, and then go over each of the A, B, C, D, and the new one of E. So I'll turn it over to Isaac, and we'll have some discussions afterwards.
Thank you, Phil. Hello, everyone. I'm Isaac Hayes. Thanks for having us. So for this mapping summary, we performed a bit of corridor analysis in addition to the public process, in addition to some of the legislative research we've done, which I'll cover in just a moment. So just as a broad overview, we do know that the northern half of the Gandy, as it is within the county, is mostly forested and north-south oriented, so it is not as diagonal as the southern half. We also know that in that northern half, generally north of Luck, we're seeing a lot more wetlands, and we're seing more steep slopes adjacent to the trail within the corridor, which makes developing trails a little more costly, a little more challenging. We do know that, as the gentleman in the public comment period mentioned, this trail is a former rail corridor, and there's a double row of trees almost the entire length. So even though I say that we're forested in the northern half, length of the trail within Polk County is generally shaded for users, which is a great asset. But again, for trail development, it would cost money to take out those trees if that was an option. We do have a number of bridge and tunnel crossings, mostly around St. Croix Falls, but again, up near Frederick and Luck. And then lastly, this is a point I'll touch on in the legislative summary, the Ice Age Trail, and you can see that just barely here in this image in orange, does share the corridor with the Gandy Dancer Trail from the south of Centuria there all the way up to Frederick before it exits to the east into Straight Lake State Park. That is an important bit of information which we'll cover in just a moment. As for existing county amenities, this is as of May 9th, 2023. We've got 44 miles of ATV trails. These are off-road trails. We have 320 miles of ATV road routes that are on county roads. We have an additional 139 miles of town road routes. So again, on-road ATV routes, but within town limits. As for bikes, we've got 80 miles of trails. Those are off-road. And then we have 9 miles of mountain bike trails. And those are mostly down in St. Croix Falls. For equestrians throughout the county, we have 65 miles of trails. Not a lot of trail activity for equestrians around the Gandy, but further west and further to the southeast. For foot traffic, we have 226 miles of trails. And then lastly, snowmobiles have 458 miles of trails in the county. So next, we'll talk legislative findings. So we really came upon some of this information when we started digging into the Ice Age Trail. The Ice Age Trail is a statewide trail. It's a national scenic trail. So it's actually co-managed by the Ice Age Trail Alliance, by the state DNR, and also by the National Park Service. So it is privy to some of that legislation. So first, under national legislation, we found fairly quickly that ATVs and UTVs and motorized vehicles in general, with exception to snowmobiles, these are not permitted on the Gandy Dancer Trail for the duration that it shares the right of way with the Ice Age Trail. Our next ask was, would it be possible to move the Ice Age Trail to one side of the corridor or another to fit in additional uses? The state DNR, so in state legislation, that question is answered. So it says it's not possible to relocate that trail footpath because the Ice Age Trail really is that full width of land. So the whole corridor legally is the Ice Age Trail for that 15.5 miles. So next we will get into our analyses of our alternatives. So as Phil and Bob mentioned, we were tasked with evaluating 4 alternatives. You'll see 6 on this page, and I will go through these one by one, tell you which ones the EESC has recommended. So for alternative A, the question was whether we could accommodate ATVs, UTVs, and or equestrians in the existing trail right-of-way. So that 100-foot right-of-way, that is the trail, whether or not we could fit additional uses either on the trail or to either side of the trail on that same land. For legislative reasons, we know that's not feasible for ATVs and UTVs. For equestrians, that is technically feasible. For alternative B1, and you'll see there's a B1 and a B2 here. So this is a mix of trail, so the trail surface itself, the trail right of way, so again, that whole 100 feet, roads or road right of ways. So this option is technically feasible for both users. So for ATVs, this would be feasible using the existing road network in the county, which is quite extensive. And then for equestrians, this would be feasible in the same way it would be feasible for actually most of these alternatives. So for B2, what we're really looking at is the same thing in terms of where we can put a trail, but we're looking at a slightly different destination here. So for the entire study, we were looking at connecting St. Croix Falls to the Burnett County line. Something we realized as with a combination of public feedback and learning about some of the county's recent investments in the town of Sterling is that the Burnett County line may or may not be a wantable destination for ATV users. As the Gandy does extend into Burnett County, ATVs would have to stop at the county line and get on ATV routes anyways, because it's not permitted on the Gandy in Burnett County. So rather than look at that option, we considered, would it be possible to connect St. Croix Falls for ATV use to recent and existing trail networks in the Sterling Forest? So you'll see a broader line here at the very bottom. So this kind of dollar line here are existing ATV routes. You'll see a thicker line here. You see Sunshine Street to the north coming up St. Croix Falls, 160th Ave to the east. And then at that point, you are connected into the existing ATV route network. This would allow folks staying in St. Croix Falls, if they so wished, to ride their ATVs, UTVs on road routes legally all the way to the town of Sterling. The more intuitive option would have been to take River Road. We ran into some challenges there. That would have been a really beautiful option, but there are challenges with getting on the highway there, as well as challenges with going through Lions Park and federal lands because the Ice Age Trail is actually there as well. So we've run into legislative hurdles for that option. So what we're showing here is a potential connection between St. Croix Falls and town of Sterling for ATVs and UTVs. For alternative C, so this is looking at shared uses on the existing trail. And this is the existing trail. So the gentleman in the comment period noted that the existing trail as he measured it was 13 feet. This is a feasibility study. So this is not a design document, but we are looking at that existing trail width and evaluating whether or not we can fit all uses at the same time on the existing trail. I will note at this point, alternative C is one of the options that the ESC has recommended. So for ATV users, again, for legislative reasons, this is not considered feasible for motorized uses, with exception to snowmobiles, which are an existing use. But for equestrians, this would be considered a feasible option. You'll notice in the map to the right there, there's a dotted red line going north from Luck. What we've heard from equestrian groups is this is probably the length of a loop that they would be looking for if such a thing were built. So that's what you're seeing for this option. Next, for alternative D, this option considers looking outside the Gandy Dancer Trail corridor altogether and whether or not purchasing routes over private land easements would be an option. We will show this in our forthcoming study. This shouldn't be a surprise to anyone, but this is a very expensive option. And we deemed this infeasible for both ATV users and equestrians for that reason. And then lastly, for alternative E, this is the second recommendation from the ESC. So this is a status quo, no change in use option. And of course, no change in use would mean that it's not feasible for ATVs, UTVs, or equestrians. So next, I'm going to dive into a little more detail here into alternative C. So again, this is the first recommendation by the Environmental Services Committee. So again, this is a planning document. So these numbers are really, these are high level numbers. We're looking at a 27.5 mile section of this corridor. And we really just want to get some numbers down on paper to understand what's really possible at a high level. So you'll see there in orange, we've got that marked out as 15 feet. And then generally what we're looking at is 42.5 feet on either side for a total width of 100 feet of right of way. This does change where you are in the corridor. You'll see shallower slopes to the south. You'll see more right of way to the east and west, depending on where you are in the trail. This is just considered a typical condition. So considerations for this alternative, we've got some pricing here at the bottom. This text is fairly small, so let's see if I can run us through it here. So you'll see first and foremost that we've got a range expressed here. So for development costs, for alternative C, so adding equestrian use only to the Gandy Dancer Trail between Luck and Lewis, so for just that 10 miles, would be between 35,000 and 66,000 for just trailhead improvements and signage, but it could be more if the trail service was changed or widened for some reason. Next is operations and maintenance costs. Adding any new users or changing uses to the trail would conceivably change those costs. And what we're showing here is a range of 1,000 to 11,000 a year for trailhead upkeep, for trail surface maintenance, and for vegetation control. Before I go any further, those ranges are reflecting numbers you might see if that work was handled internally by the county, or if that work was hired out by a private consultant. And that number may, in actuality, be higher or lower. It might fall somewhere in between, depending on how that work is handled. Next on the right here, as Bob mentioned, any changes in use would open up the MOU, so the Memorandum of Understanding with the Wisconsin DNR, as well as the master plan. So prior to starting that master plan amendment process, the county and the DNR would need to potentially carve out Polk County from the existing MOU or create a new Memorandum of Understanding altogether. And lastly, the master plan amendment does come at some cost as well. So the MOU would be either recreated or amended in some way, and then the master plan would need to be amended as well. And you do see in the cost here at the bottom. So that's estimated to cost again between 35,000 and roughly 110,000, depending if that's handled internally for all that public process and all that study, or externally through a consultant such as myself. Next slide. Great. So this is still alternative C. So this is just a finer level of detail. And what we're showing here are two potential options for how alternative C might play out if the county was to pursue adding equestrians to the Gandy Dancer Trail. So what we're showing here is a roughly 15-foot existing trail width with a shoulder on each side. So in a true co-use scenario, there would be no changes to the trail. You would see horses using the edge of the trail or the shoulder adjacent to existing users. And horses generally require in single file line for the USDA at least 9 feet of horizontal clearance and then 12 feet of vertical clearance. And then the second option here, which is the more expensive option and potentially the safer option. If you could go to the next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. This would be a separated trail. So this is actually expanding the trail width just slightly, and that does come at a cost. So the gentleman in the comment period remarked that this is all ballast, so this is all crushed aggregate, and creating a buffer of some sort, we're showing turf here, would come at a cost. So for preparing that soil, for seeding for preparing that ballast, and for seeding that ballast, for preparing the soil to take seed, we're estimating anywhere from 10,000 to 19,000 for seeding that full 10 miles of separated equestrian trail and buffer for an option like this. Please. And alternative C. So again, this is status quo, no change in use. Of course, because there would be no change in use, development costs, O&M costs, the MOU, the master plan would be unchanged. All right. In closing, this is our final presentation with the county. We do have a forthcoming feasibility report, which we've been preparing throughout the process. This is constantly evolving and will take into account what we've heard tonight. We got an email almost on the way up here from another stakeholder, which pushed our statements up to 18. We've been provided a ton of feedback on this process. We really appreciate all the feedback throughout the process. I've worked in a number of projects, bigger and smaller, and the public process has been robust. We've received a ton of diverse feedback throughout the process, and it's been incredibly helpful for us in evaluating the feasibility of all these alternatives. And with that, I will close the presentation if that's all right. Thank you.
Question? Go ahead.
So you talk about four-wheelers having trails on county and town roads of about 450 miles combined. Are those roads open to hikers and bikers too? Because they always seem to get lumped into the four-wheeler group. But as far as I know, you can hike and bike down any county or town road too. So I think those roads are open to everybody.
And or equestrian as well.
Right.
Any questions? Thank you. Okay. Feasibility study. We're back into, I need a motion to,
Not yet. I think now you have an opportunity to have a discussion around the Gandy dancer and the different alternatives and what this board might want to do.
we want to discuss that now.
You're in 12.
We haven't,
No, that's
the questions.
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Go ahead.
Well, I think the opportunity that the board has now is to take the information that was presented and all the information that's been given to the committees and say, is there an option you want to consider? The challenge or the opportunity is if you're going to open up or look at adding equestrians or anything else on the trail, you got to open up the master plan. You have to first, as I understand it, Bob, adjust the MOU and get a carve out with the DNR. So the question is, do you want to go that route? Or would you rather delay it, postpone it, or say we don't want to change it?
And I do want to also add that the issues that exist in the Stour litigation, if the court goes one way, one particular way, it could revoke all counties across the state their ability to engage in master planning process at all. And so given that, if you do go with the option of opening up a master plan, renegotiating with the DNR, because I believe the current MOU has 3 counties. Is that right, Bob? Five counties. So it's not just Polk County and the DNR. It's an agreement we have 5 counties and the DNR. So if we start that process and put employee time, staff time towards that, and then a month or 2 down the road, and if it goes to the Court of Appeals, maybe a year or 2 down the road, learn that we no longer have the right, it would have all been an investment that it becomes moot. And so because this is not time sensitive, in other words, this is something that can be done today, next year, 2 years from now, it might make some fiscal sense. This isn't a legal opinion, but it might make fiscal sense to say, let's wait and see where this other litigation resolves before we start investing resources to open up something on the Gandy, although it might be some folks' desire to do so, and that might be your policy push, but just from a fiscal conservative standpoint, being stewards of the taxpayer dollar, it might not be the right time, and that's just some.
What you're saying is if leave it or postpone it, if you can, of course, until we find out more financial results as resulting from the litigation that we have pending now.
And what the county, what our powers and duties might be depending upon how the court and ultimately the Court of Appeals likely will lean. So with that, I'm not a policymaker, but I think option E, was it? E. Again, it doesn't mean you're saying we're never going to look at it.
Leave
It's
it
saying
as
status
is
quo
at the
right now.
present time.
Yeah.
Is that what you're saying? Leave it as is?
That-
Wasn't that what E was?
Yes.
Yes.
But again, it's not saying that's our policy. We want to, it's just saying we're not doing anything right now because
Not
for all
making-
these reasons that might not necessarily be, or they might be, but they might not necessarily be because that's what you want for the trail.
In essence, we'd be tabling it.
Yes.
That's what it sounds like.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Which might make sense. The alternative might be if this board says, hey, no, we feel strongly about C or some version of that, even if you did that, recommend that could go back to committee and committee would then just sit and wait on it until more information
We
becomes
might
available.
end up in the same situation as we are with the Stour Trail now.
Yeah.
In the future with this, if we make a decision at this time.
Yeah, and adding up like all the numbers of all the highest maintenance, MOU, all of that, it's $21,000 per mile.
Really?
Yeah, it's over 200, it's 206, almost $207,000. And that's just for the first year of maintenance. And I was just taking the numbers at the high end, just to say like, what's the highest possible cost? And we're already at, you know, and this is before any possible litigation if we, yeah. And that includes redoing the master plan, the MOU and all that business. So.
And I
to
can
me, it doesn't make
imagine,
sense to do anything
yeah.
right now.
From a staff morale issue, putting years of work into something and having the court say, you didn't even have the authority to do it. And I don't think that's what the court is going to do, but there's always a chance. And so that's where, how would you look to your constituents? You poured all this time and effort and then it was for moot. I just think from a fiscal responsibility standpoint, not policy. I mean, I have no opinion on whether equestrian should be, it's a good idea or any of that. I just think from a timing.
Chair.
Go ahead.
I'm learning a little bit more here about master planning and things like that. Apart from the fiscal aspect you're talking about, is there some degree or have we done any socializing of this among those stakeholders, the DNR, these other counties, whoever else participates in that?
That part, I mean, yes. With I don't know about the other counties, but certainly with the DNR. And we obviously just went through this whole process. What did we start, 2018, 17? For the Stour, and that took years. And I think ended up really creating some division within the community. And this would likely do the same. And is it worth it when we don't know what the results are going to be from the Stour litigation? Yeah. So.
Can I?
Go ahead, Steve.
To me, it would make sense just to pick E, let's sit as is, so staff gets a break. Because if we leave it hanging, it goes on and on. You get home, you got 5 messages on your phone. I mean.
And a future
if you-
board
if you
could.
use that, you just kind of let it lay until such a time that we're gonna revisit it. But in the meantime, the decision's been made and we don't have to take all these calls and, just kind of puts it to bed until.
Plus, if staff is working on this, they're not working on things that we already had in our plan. And so it takes away from those projects too.
It's the lost opportunity costs of all the things that we're missing.
Just I think the discussion from Aaliyah is great because we're talking about, we right now can talk about the reasons why we might make a decision to support, one of the two options. I think and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's kind of important though that we just make it clear that what we're potentially going to action on in a little bit is, given the information in front of us, we've made this decision. And if anybody wants to revisit it in the future, they can. We don't want to tie all these other like reasonings in it about like, we're kicking the can down the road because of X, Y, Z. We're just going to say because of the information in front of, potentially, we're going to say because of the information in front of us, we've chosen this option. And if anybody wants to revisit in the future, they're certainly welcome to bring it up. You know, I don't want to start tying like any kind of messaging into why we're doing what we're doing.
Okay, John.
I'll make a couple comments. I appreciate what your committee did there, Bob. But I just want to state my position. Everything comes with a cost, and Barb, you mentioned some costs there. And my position has always been what's best for the taxpayer in Polk County. We're going to be coming in a budget time, and we got 100 things to consider, but we should have the vision, at least that's my position, is what's best for the taxpayers of Polk County. Bob, as much as your committee, all the work you did, as a taxpayer and certainly as a senior citizen, we're finally starting to recognize that there is young people and senior citizens in this county that need help. And I really don't feel that there's anything in my hand for the $80,000. That's my position. We coming into another position here where we have great resources. That's what this is all about, is the trails. And you listen to these comments, some of them don't even be taxpayers of Polk County, which is all right, but they have a very strong position of what happens here. And as a taxpayer and have the vision of what the costs are to the taxpayers, I'm very careful of getting. Polk County has been, I live a mile from Minnesota border and St. Croix County. And it really pains you to see Polk County having the reputation as a pass-through county. I mean, people are coming from all over our association down there in St. Croix Falls with our information center and everything. We're trying to get people to spend money in Polk County. And it's our responsibility to help the taxpayers in Polk County. And so that's what I try to base my bottom decision on. I remember when, back in the 90s, when the decision was made by Judge Bill Wyrick to segregate the Stour Trail, which should have never happened. And I remember the president of the Tuscovia Trail that runs laterally across the state of Wisconsin came down to the public comments, to the public meetings, and expressed how they all get along. These questions and bikers and hikers, and that's from the people that I've talked to. The Stour Trail is a perfect example of, somebody will stop along the road and let hiker or horse people or ATV or somebody, and they all get along and have respect. We're lacking that. We can help that situation.
Okay. Any more discussion regarding to the feasibility study in reference to some action that we may be taking once we adjourn the committee as a whole? Or are we prepared to go to the committee as a whole and make a motion? What's your choice? Any more discussion?
So now you come out of committee of the whole.
Need a motion?
I would move that we come out of committee of the whole.
Second.
And seconded. Out of committee, all in favor?
Aye.
Mr. Chair. Oh, sorry, no, go ahead.
I was just gonna say that there's been the discussion in reference to our action, potential action. The Gandy Dancer, does anybody want to make a motion in regards to the discussion that we go ahead?
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I have a motion if it's the right time.
Go ahead, it is.
So I would move that we vote for option E to leave the trail as is, given the information in front of us from the community and from the feasibility study.
That exists, that you want to just vote for E at this time? Okay, that's the motion.
Second.
Motion made and seconded to vote to adopt E. Does everybody want to a refresher course on what E is?
Question, Corporation Council question. Does this take it off the floor? Because option E is to leave as is. So does this take it off the floor to come back a year from now?
It wouldn't bind a future board. It's just what you're doing right now.
Okay, any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign.
Aye.
Okay. Motion passed. Any other action that's necessary as a result of the meeting?
Do you want to address the code of ethics?
Ethics.
Okay,
You could postpone to a date certain, and that being April. Let's go March, because this board would be advising the next board.
And that's when we do our rules of order.
Right.
so what are we doing?
I think you should entertain a motion from someone to postpone to a date certain, that being the March of 2024 county board meeting.
All right, who wants to make the motion?
Would we postpone like the discussion of all of this, or would we want what we would want to move forward by March?
Both. I think the executive committee would still, because they're the committee that develops the recommendations to the full board on rules of order. So the executive committee would still hash through current language, incorporating it into the rules of order. We could be working on that up until March, but March would be the date the county board
I would
address
move
it
that we
next.
postpone that. You can always bring it up again.
Because otherwise it should be at the organizational meeting in April.
That's what
Right.
we-
Well, this board would be advising the next board.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm saying March.
I see, okay, just for advice.
Okay. All right, what's the motion again?
I made the motion.
It definitely
second.
kills it. Postponing indefinitely kills it, just so you're clear.
You want to postpone it indefinitely and kill it? Is that what you're saying?
Well, that's my preference, but
Second,
you second?
seconded. Any discussion?
Okay. Question. So by postponing it till March,
The motion was. to
oh, the
postpone
motion was to kill it
indefinitely.
altogether, just leave it as
you
is.
can bring it up later. I don't think right now is the time.
It would just have to be a new resolution at whatever time. It doesn't stop this board from making advice to the next board on this or any other rule of order.
So we can still
Steve,
pick it up in
go
March.
ahead.
So everybody here has a chance to feedback to the executive committee. Any of the change they might want to make in this, and then executive will look at it again, right?
Not
But
if
if he kills it, nobody will look at it, right?
it's done. Somebody would have to sponsor a new resolution.
That seems like a lot to go through when we've been working on this for over a year.
So you could vote this down, or you could move to amend his motion and insert March County Board meeting for indefinitely and see if either he's friendly to it and the second is friendly to it, or vote on that proposed amendment and see if that goes through. Those are your options.
So when do we make the amendment?
Now,
Okay. I'd like to amend John's to eliminate the open end and put the date of March 24 in there. If John will agree.
I would accept that because the reason why I stated that in the first place, I think there needs to be some changes to it.
Do we have a second on the motion?
Second.
No, we have to-
Second.
Russ has to be.
Russ has to be in agreement as well.
Oh, sorry.
I don't think anything we've done to the rules of order or to this has any teeth to it and is going to make any difference. It's just an exercise we're doing. So whether we kill it now or kill it in March, let's kill it in March if that's when you want to do it.
All right, so it sounds like that was a friendly amendment.
Okay,
Sorry.
what do we got
So
standing?
now you can vote on the motion as amended.
We have
to postpone to
we
March.
Have a second on that also.
Yeah,
Yeah,
So
vote
we're
on
gonna
the
vote on
amendment first.
the amendment of March to add. This lasts
March
until
to my
March.
motion.
To the amendment. Does everybody understand that? Everybody that doesn't understand it other than me. Okay. All right, let's vote on the amendment. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, now we'll vote on the motion.
that was a
And the,
motion.
Ended the motion.
That was the amendment.
That was the amendment.
No, the amendment passed because it was a
Passed the
friendly
amendment.
amendment.
Oh,
As long as the first and second agree, you don't need to vote on the amendment. It automatically amends the original underlying motion. So
So we're done.
unless you didn't understand that and want to revote,
So
it's
So
over.
they didn't need to vote.
It's over.
move on.
so
Everything's good, Jay. I promise.
Well, then we have to, we still
We did vote.
haven't voted on the original.
Because both the first and the second agreed to amend their original, there was no need to vote on the amendment.
Oh. That was the last motion. Well, Russ second.
Let's skip on.
All right. We're done.
Good.
I make a motion, we adjourn.
Oh,
committee of- We can't do that?
You're already out of committee of the whole.
Oh, okay. I missed that one. Like, whoa.
Second.
I know, quick, somebody second your motion.
Need a break or what?
I'm having motion. Break.
Does anybody want to break or do you want to take? the
Yes, I
presentation?
do.
Do it. Keep going. That's fine.
That's it.
Some presentation.
All right. We're gonna take a short
We are. okay.
stretch. Other than that.
Sorry, Jason.
I could use a drink of water.
Clerk is
Oh, we lived there 7 years.
the clerk. There she is. No worries, honestly, I totally understand.
Yeah, meeting's already coming and submitted. Yes, long.
Right.
Oh, yeah. My grandson was there for his first. If I could start without you, I was more me.
Is that one?
Mayor, can you bring up the PowerPoint? All right. Good evening, and that since we're being re-recorded, I am Jason Cheezit, County Zoning Administrator. We're here tonight, or I'm here tonight to take and explain to you and that about a project that we've got going on in our department. And also in cooperation with the Sheriff's Department over there. And that it's part of a big project called Next Generation 911 at the state level. And so many of you maybe had even received some calls over the last couple months and that for some address changes and that we did in the county. It started in really 2017 when I was here and that going through and doing some of these changes. And it's just really evolved into a big cooperative, and that agreement and that our partnership between the town and the county. And it's all part of the new 911 system and that for Next Generation 911 implementation. So with that, I wanted to take and just kind of
bring this up to you guys, make sure that you're aware of what's going on, what our process has been, where we're at in the whole project, and then open it up for any questions and kind of explain why we're doing certain things in some areas and certain things in other areas. So with that, any questions so far? And feel free to ask them as we go through. So just back up, and that the county adopted the rural address system in 1978. They hired Wang Enterprises in 1980 and that to actually go through and order all the signs and create the road center lines and the addressing for the county back then. Before the Wang deal, and that's back when we had the rural routes and that for our addressing. Our office was delegated the rural addressing because of when we do permitting for sanitary systems, then we issue the rural address for the property at that time. So that's why we're here. There's been quite a bit of county, well, not quite a bit, but there has been county board resolutions over the years to help with the addressing. A lot of it has been because the county is seeing growth. We have, areas that maybe were non-compliant, so they were changed. 1994 was one of them. There was a county board resolution passed and that said that the county board wishes to have as many roads as possible, numbered roads, not named roads. And then in 2007, the county board approved a rural address change of roughly 300 addresses. That was mainly in the southeast quadrant of the county. And since then, you guys adopted the rural addressing ordinance in 2019, which basically just provides staff and that kind of some principles or guidelines and that for administering the addressing system in the county. Go ahead, Claire. So a lot of our towns and that, especially up in the north, and that have longer response times because they're just more remote. And so there was an incident in actually the town of Clam Falls that really started this project off. It was back in the Seven Pines Lodge or Trout Haven condo complex back there on the Knapp Creek. Basically a guy's wife and that was having a stroke on the floor. He had an alpha character address and basically he watched the ambulance go by 3 times. And so he had made some comments in that to the town board up there and the town of Clam Falls says, okay, county, we want you to change. So that was the first one. Then our northern counties kept on going through and changing and that faster than what our southern counties have. And now since COVID, a lot of our towns have ARPA dollars. And there's really those 4 pools of expenditures that they're able to spend the ARPA dollars on. And emergency services is something that the towns are a part of, and it can apply evenly to everybody within their town. So one of the things that we were approached by many towns was purchasing new fire number signs for everybody in the town. And the desires that we've received from the town are that we don't want to buy signs that are already the new style. We don't want to buy signs and that are non-compliant to the addressing system if the county is going to have to go through and change them in a few years for the new 911 system. So we internally developed a partnership and that said, okay, we as a county realize that we've got address signs and that are non-compliant. Some of it may be staff error. Some of it may be development, pains of the county and that are growth, future lots were subdivided and now we got issues in order to take and have compliant addresses. So the deal that we've got worked out with the towns is the county purchases and pays for the signs that we change and the town and then pays for the remaining signs within their town. And then the town is installing them. So otherwise, just in normal workflow and that in our office, if we have somebody come in and apply for a new address, the county ends up paying for the sign and we end up paying the town to install it if we're not working as part of this project right now to be a cooperative agreement. So our general process, we actually put our staff in the field to go out and do those inventories. As part of that inventory, we're able to take and look at changes in land use, maybe a campground expanded, maybe we need a new map. And that for that campground, maybe it's an apartment complex. We can find out where the apartments are, you know, in the building. And that's one of the huge assets of the new 911 system is that we can import that kind of information into the GIS database. And that will be available then to dispatch and people that are going to be responding and that for it. So that's kind of a big thing. With that, we evaluate each and every address and that to see if it's within the guidelines provided in your rural addressing ordinance that you guys did in 2019. And then we go ahead and we order all the signs and we deliver them because there's usually a lot of and that. So, and then the town installs on their own time and that at their own will. So, but we do work back and forth to make sure, because if we do have any address changes, we don't want to send them out too fast and be a big shock to everybody. But yet we want to send them out right as the town is going out and starting to install. Any questions so far? All right, go ahead, Claire. So here's the project progress that we've got. We've got 17 towns that have inquired. We've got 15 of them that have put it in writing to our department that says, yes, we want to work with the county. We want to buy new fire number signs for our town. We want to go through with all the changes and that you guys see fit. And so you can kind of see the early ones in that part of that 2007 county board, $7,500 budget allocation, where Clear Lake, Clayton, Clam Falls, again, was the most recent that we've really started with. Lorraine was shortly behind. Bone Lake, we did that in 2021. We had 220 addresses that we changed up there roughly. West Sweden, we did in spring of 22. That was roughly 200 addresses. Beaver's in progress right now. We've went through, we've ordered the signs, delivered the signs. The town has them all. They're installing them right now. Everything has been done as far as the address changes, 187 net there. Black Brook was much smaller in scale. We only changed 44 addresses. And I believe all those signs have been installed. So that one's complete now. The town of Lincoln, that one is the one that you maybe have gotten some phone calls on here lately. And in the town of Lincoln, we changed 317 addresses. Those signs are all in the town's hands and being put up as we speak. Eureka is one of the more newer ones that we've been working on as staff. We've went out, we've completed our inventory, and basically right now it's waiting to be evaluated for the compliant and non-compliant signs. Same thing in that with Sterling. That one's in progress as well, just looking at evaluating. Town of McKinley, and that there's a prime town in that. We only changed 11 addresses. There just wasn't as many lakes. There wasn't as many non-compliant addresses. Town of Johnstown, and that we've done the west half of the town. And now we're working on the area around Pipe Lake and any non-compliant addresses in that area. St. Croix Falls, and that's going to be in the future. We're looking at spring of 2024. Because as you can imagine, this all takes a lot of staff time to take and go through all these addresses, do the orders and etc. So, so that one has been approved. Balsam Lake has been approved by the town. And right now, Milltown and Waketown are waiting on me to give them an estimate on that, on what it's going to cost the town and how many addresses we're going to change, that kind of stuff. So the towns of Apple River, Alden, Farmington, Garfield, Georgetown, Waukena, Osceola, and that we have not heard from. So.
You don't want to change.
Yep.
Can I ask you about that, Jason? Does that mean that if they're in compliance, that there's not an issue within that program? Or-
So because we started offering this program and that where the county was paying for those non-compliant address signs, and that to our northern towns, I'll call them, and that we did do a letter in spring of 22 and the spring of 23, just to make sure, hey, we're doing this. If you're interested, fine. If you're not, fine. Just to make sure that every town has had the same opportunity to take and join the program, and we just haven't heard from those.
But that's not to say that those towns don't have any non-compliant addresses.
May I ask a question on
They
this?
probably do
Okay.
have.
What makes it non?
You can't-
What does that mean?
I'll get to that further in my presentation, so. Okay. So I'm gonna take a few steps back, and now I'm gonna kind of go back into the rural addressing system. So we're really laid out much like a city would be with a block 100, block 200. All of our avenues run east and west. All of our streets run north and south. Basically, we started at the southeast corner of the county. 100 would be 10th Avenue, or sorry, 10th Street, 20th Street, 30th Street. The avenues, we started at the south, 10th, 20th, 30th, 40th, and then going right up. And so for our responders, especially EMS sheriffs, most people and that would know that Highway 8 is 130th. You know, so then you can judge that, you know, Highway 8 is 130th, the South County line, that's 13 miles away. You know, so if you didn't have the city of Amory, you should be 13 miles and that roughly to get down to the South County line. And so that's how, if you're going from 160th Avenue to 170th Avenue, as you're driving down the road, you know, that's 1 mile, you know, to be there. Furthermore, when we look at our addresses, and that they're also set up on the grid. So when we assign a new address, we take and actually measure off from the section line or the center of the road, if there is one there, and we measure up to wherever that driveway point hits the road, not where the house is, not where the lot is, where their driveway point hits. And at that point, we take whatever number of feet that is, divided by the 5,280 feet in a mile, and that tells me a number. And so that's how we assigned the number to be appropriate. So if you're a quarter mile north of 160th Avenue, you would be 1625 and that, or 1624, depending on what side of the road you are on. We've got an acronym that we use, and that NOWSEE, NOWSEE. So if you're on the north side or the west side of a road, it's going to be an odd address. If you're on the south side or the east side of the road, it's going to be an even address. So that's what determines that. Go ahead, Claire. So here's kind of my blank grid, and some of you might know where Bargain Lake Lane is, okay? I can tell you, and that it's up between 2,800 and 2,900, and that there, because that's where Bargain Lake is, it's in the town of McKinley, okay? That address range, whatever those addresses are, could be anywhere between the 2,800 and the 2,900 block going all the way across the county. So that same address, Bargain Lake Lane, could be in the town of Sterling or it could be in the town of McKinley. Okay, that's if it's assigned as a street. If it's assigned as an avenue, and that we could be over here, 28 to 2,900, we could be down here in the town of Farmington, or we could be up in the town of Sterling. So there's no geographical reference to where that is. Versus if we have 120th Avenue, we know that we're gonna fall right here, right south of Highway 8, 1 mile south, all the way across the county. So now when we do our address points, if we're 1150, 120th Avenue, we can go right up here, 1150 to 120th. I know I'm right in the middle of that section. It's a specific spot in the county. Now, the issue that we have when we have an alpha character, maybe it's 1150A, there's no physical location, there's no sequence to the A. And that the way it was done in the past, it was basically on development, whichever building was built first. And so there's really no rhyme or reason. And so that's where we have a lot of confusion, and we have the risk of running a slower response time. Okay, Claire. So again, I've mentioned the new 911 system. The old systems were analog. They're great at taking and tracking landline phones and that in somebody's house. They're okay at tracing some cell phones, especially when there's a landline in the area. You guys, as a county board, took and upgraded the PSAP equipment, which is basically dispatch equipment, a couple of years ago. And that for the new stuff. So that had to be updated. The old system didn't allow for a lot of the interface between the GIS mapping and the PSAP equipment. So now the new one we can. And there was just a lot of limited abilities, slower system. I mean, it was a 40-year-old system, so. Okay. The new NG 911 system is countrywide, and that's not just the state of Wisconsin, it's everywhere. The Wisconsin Department of Military Affairs did come out with a handbook for us. It's about 330 pages. In 2020, and that we use, it talks about assigning addresses to motels, apartment complexes, duplexes, you name it. The IP system is faster than that compared to the old analog system. It allows for anybody needing 911 services to send voice, pictures, video, text messages, all that kind of stuff, and that to 911 as well. And that it just provides more efficiencies with the PSAP equipment. It also has better connections in that for the mutual aid districts and that on who's going to be responding. And then again, those maps and notes are able to be entered. So, go ahead. Yep. Okay, so when we're evaluating those addresses, what constitutes a change? And right now, and as you'll see further down, we've heard a lot on the alpha characters. Those are the main issues. In that there's been a lot of rumors out there that we're going through and changing every named road in the county, and that's not true. So we only change according to the ordinance, and that the minimum amount of address is needed in order to get everybody on the grid system so that we have a physical location and so that everything's in a sequence. If that sequence, and it does happen, and I'm not gonna lie about it, because the reason why those A's and B's were assigned in the first place is because there wasn't an address to assign. If we end up redoing the whole road, and that at that point, then we do change the name and that to a numbered name, and that to follow the 1994 County Board resolution or policy and that they did. And the reason being that is it really does create a lot easier transition for the people on the road, even if they don't want to agree to that. Because if you're taking, 1020 and that 120th Street and you're giving it to your neighbor or a couple houses down, and that you'll never quit having the constant mail being put in each other's mailboxes. It'll just keep on going back and forth. And so, but if you change the actual road name, then everything's kind of like a whole reboot. And so if we have to take and change the majority of the road because we can't get it on that grid system, and that's when we're doing that. Another big one, and then I've got some examples of this, is shared driveways. So generally in the county, a shared driveway is defined as serving 2 lots or 2 dwellings. Anything more than that, you got 3, 4. At that point, then it needs to be called a named private road or a numbered private road. And so those ones we're going through and we're correcting and that as we can. These are not new problems, and that these shared driveways with multiple addresses on them, they've been historical, long time ago development, and that we're just able to correct right now. So any questions so far? Trying to go fast for you guys. So, all right. So you can about imagine this is right out here on East Balsam, and that here was a private drive that came in. These people here all got together and actually petitioned us and that to change their addresses because they had so many issues with getting deliveries and mail. But how I'm imagining that this was developed, 1747 is the old house. Then they did A, then they did B, then they did C, then they did D. All right, that's pretty good. That's in a good sequence. It's probably going the wrong way, but it's not bad. But then they probably split this lot here into another parcel, and that no A's, B, C, D to give it, so we got double A. So it's been like that for a long time. But like that person's address is 1747 double A, 170th Avenue, County Road I, Balsam Lake, Wisconsin. So anyway, it's a little bit cumbersome. And so we actually changed it now. Go ahead, Claire. So now this is what it looks like now. So Town Road is 175th Avenue, and that 175th Avenue was extended over. And basically everything is chronological, and that dot's not showing, but boom, 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 everybody's got an address. Now, before, all the fire number signs, what makes these really confusing is all the fire number signs were out at County Road I. And that now there's a street sign there. People can put private drive on it or whatever they want to sign it as. But then every house number comes back here just like it was going down a normal road. So that's a nice thing, and that makes it a lot easier to see. Okay. These are kind of hard to see, but this is another area. So here's a private drive. It's not much more than a goat path coming back in here. And look at all the addresses and all the properties that we have. Again, there's 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. There's 10 addresses from that shared private driveway. All those fire number signs are out here on 120th. And that when you get back in here, flip a coin, and that's really what it is, because you don't know where to go. And so that one we haven't changed in that, but that would be a prime example when I see something like that. And that we've got a shared driveway, we've got an issue. There's no fire number signs back here. We've got alpha characters back there. All of these addresses, 1818 is probably the most accurate as far as where it is here. So those will they can bring you to here. I'm not going to tell you that they won't. 1818, 1820, they'll all bring you here. But now like the 1830s, we've got whatever 120th Avenue coming off here. Those are going to be up higher. So in the addressing. All right, go ahead, Claire. Here's a recent one that we changed. It's in the town of Lincoln on Highway 46, and it comes off here. And all the old addresses, and that were the odd numbers, the 1039, 1051, 1053. Well, you can about imagine. So here's the road from Highway 46. Everything is odd. So you have no idea which side of the road they're on. By taking and naming this one a private drive, we've got a house that comes off here, and that now they're an even number like they should be, and that versus everyone being an odd number. And trying to guess, so, okay, go ahead. Okay, so this is one that we changed in the town of Georgetown. And you can see basically we've got whatever, half a mile here. So that's going to roughly give me 50 addresses to assign in that area. But when you got a lake, you've got a lot of road area in that area. And so that's why we simply run out of enough numbers to assign, because if you figure out 5,280 feet in a mile, and that dividing it by 50 addresses per each side of the road, basically you got one number per every 105 feet. And that now that's perfect if everything is square and we have nice square roads, because then we would be able to have an address for every 100-foot lake lot. The problem is when we're going around the lakes and that we're not square, and we got a lot longer road and a lot more frontage and that along our road because of it. And that's where the issue becomes. So we end up getting creative and trying to take and split the road so that we can get double address ranges. Or a lot of times that, let's say that avenue here, we'll end up extending the address range into the middle of the lake because we know that there's not going to be anybody that's ever going to build there in order to make it fit. So it's not easy all the time. So, and it would be a lot easier if we had a 5-number address system, but of course that would require changing everybody's address in the whole county. So, all right, Claire. So I had a hard time putting this into my PowerPoint. I think the text that's in bold there is important. It's from Justin March with Alina Health. It says, and that they are the ones that dispatch the Lakes Region EMS in Western Polk County. You don't need to read it, but below is the email string telling me that Polk County is doing some overhauling of their addressing. That's awesome. Anything to get a better understanding of what's going on out there, we support 100%. So, right. Go ahead, Claire. This is one, we didn't reach out to the post office. They actually provided us with this email. This is back in March of 2022. And it specifically calls out those alpha characters and where it's having a hard time and that with their mail sorting machines as far as knowing which one is which. The post office is good at sorting apartment A, unit 1, unit 2, suite 100, but they're not good at those alpha characters because we are unique. We are the only ones that do it this way. So. Okay, I think that's it. So, yeah, Russ.
So the only issue you're having, and even the reason you're putting the PowerPoint on for us tonight, is because there are people out there getting their addresses changed that are disgruntled, they come speak at public comment, and they speak about the cost and the inconvenience to them. How much cost and inconvenience is it to the, when you do 300 people?
For us on staff, and that,
Well, for
or
homeowners, for the people, how much, what does it cost to change all your, everything in your wallet or purse? All your, everything that has an address on it?
Yep.
What is the cost and inconvenience?
Sir, may I
No.
speak up? I've been upstairs since 6 o'clock.
No.
legal documents, won't have to change because they're tied to the legal description of the property. But yes, in that, any accounts that you would have in that driver's license and that, I'm not sure what the DMV has for a time frame on that or even what it costs.
Or your family and friends?
Yep, correct.
You have to have your correct address.
Correct. Yep, it would be the same thing as if you were moving, and that really, and that as far as the process. So, yep.
Okay, so is that why you put the PowerPoint on tonight for us?
Yeah, and that we wanted to take and just make sure that you guys were aware, and that, to be honest with you, when we started doing this with the town of Clam Falls since I've been here, and that I never thought that this would be that big of a project and a cooperative relationship between the towns and the county. It's the biggest thing in that I'm aware of going on in the county right now. That's been a partnership between the towns and the county 100%. So, and that unfortunately, it would be going a lot faster than what it is. I simply just don't have the time. So I'm doing it on the side and that as a kind of a fill-in. So, yeah, that's the reasoning.
Comment.
Yeah, sorry.
I live on the River Road. And my south driveway, which I don't use to get to my home, but it's my south driveway, has 3. And prior to the change that you made, you're right. All 3 numbers are out on the end of the road. And when you go into this dead end, you have no idea. Now they've changed it to 295th Avenue, which is, designates it as an avenue. And as we drive in now, the 3 numbers are still out on the end of the road. But right or left now.
Yeah.
Odd and even. So the person on the left side came to me and said, my husband's got heart problems. We stay back here. Oh, we got a cell phone. How do I make sure they get here? I said, put a number on the end of your driveway that's reflective. And they did right away. So now when we come in there in a fire truck in the middle of the night, we'll see that reflective sign with that arrow. And, the other 2 addresses just jive because they're both on this side of the road. So it's a great improvement.
Yeah, I mean, trust me, I'm sure there's a lot of people that think, just that zoning administrator on his little power trip again. But it's a lot of work in that for us and our staff and that to take and go out and do all this, to try to do a very thorough job. To take and go through and answer all these phone calls and that, because really what I just gave you is my little elevator speech that I give to every person that's calling me back. And we had a little, or I had a little flaw in my process. I'm going to be honest with you. We had done so many, 600 changes up in the northern part of our county, never really had a lot of blowback on it. And whether it was at the county level or on the town level. And now with the town of Lincoln and that, it seems like there's been a lot more people and that concerned. So we're going to take and try to change our process to do more notification on the front end, do like a press release saying, okay, town of Balsam Lake and that we're going through and doing some address changes. Here's why, and very similar to this. And so that's another reason why I'm here tonight is in that to know that we need to do some work and that we need to do a better job on notifying our EMS staff and our fire responders. So since the changes in Lincoln, we've been over, we've talked to our EMS staff, we've seen what they do on their end, and believe it or not, it is still a very mechanical entry type of field and that for them. So time does count. And so if they got an address that pulls up and verifies to the GIS mapping, that speeds up the whole calling of the responders out. And we've also took and presented what we're doing or this addressing project to all the fire chiefs at their fire chief meeting here a month ago or so. So we're kind of behind the 8 ball. We're trying to do better at notifying and getting that out there. And that I've been working extensively in that with the US Postal Service out of Milwaukee, and that's where all these changes are updated. The mail system, how that works is automatic mail forwarding from that old address with those people's names on it to the new address. That's how it works. They're also going through and cleaning up their system at the same time because they maybe had a renter that was using an A or a unit A, and they just want to make sure that those are still valid addresses. So there's been a lot of emails back and forth. So any other questions? Sorry, I tried to go fast.
Okay. The yeah, I understand that, but the 911 system, is that working well? We haven't heard from law enforcement, the ones that direct the people, emergency services to the addresses. What would happen if Osceola, one of them I missed, that it doesn't comply? What are they gonna end up with? Are we jeopardizing the people in Osceola from getting emergency services? Can you address that? That seems to be kind of important. That's part of the compliance of the system, is it not?
I asked the sheriff and Jill if they'd like to come here just for this reason, because many of the new supervisors are getting hammered with questions and concerns. And I thought it'd be a good time to kind of reintroduce the concept. The ordinance was passed. And I just wanted you all to be reminded, and that's, I don't know, Sheriff, or Jill, if you'd like to say anything to why it's important.
Well, yeah, we train our staff on the grid system because that's the system. That's what's the resolution years ago adopted that system. And without a phone and a GPS, a map, you can find any address. And as they go through and update these, it certainly is a benefit to our new staff. You know, those of us that have worked in this county 25 plus years, we know most of the county. But again, with cell phones and all the technology, you know, it isn't just a landline that calls us, it can be anywhere. So the grid system is important for us to know that. And I still carry a paper map, and people will laugh and say that's archaic, but some areas of the county don't even have cell phone service. So you can't get your GPS to work and some of those things. So we train using the grid system. I know a lot of people tend to want to be hung up on having that little lake name, that I've heard Walleye Court and some of that. I think the resolution allows for keeping a historical name on the road. And that's something maybe Jason can talk about. But for us, the grid system, the numbers mean something. Like you said, 130th Avenue is 13 miles north of the county. I know where I'm going. I have a general idea just in my mind, what part of the county, when I hear an address, where I'm going. So that's why we support it. And as we go to the next gen 911, it is important to have that system that works with the county GIS map at our disposal. The deputies will actually be able to see that map.
When is that system going to be adopted?
We're just starting with it as we go forward with the grant to get things going. But what do you think?
I'd say a year.
A year? About a year.
Maybe within the year.
That's gonna that will complicate the the non-complying addressing.
Well,
It's
I think-
already come.
I think Mr. Warndall hit it perfect. When there's a road with 5 houses on it and all the street numbers are out there, I don't know which house is what house. And like I say, the fire department has it easy. They can see the flames and the smoke sometimes. If you're laying in the backyard with a heart attack, there is situations like that where people are going to have a slower response time because of this. You know, we had a call today, guy with a gun on the back porch firing rounds off. We don't want to just drive in their driveway with our lights on, you know, we might park a few houses down and if you've got to sneak in the dark to get a good tactical approach, it's kind of nice to know which house you're going to. For search warrants, we have to have a definite address, or if the address is wrong on the face of a search warrant, that can be something that costs us a lot of money liability wise if we go to the wrong house. So it's a simple system and it's an effective system.
It's confusing around certain areas.
Yeah, maybe Jason, I don't want to put you on the spot, but just mention that historical name portion, because I think that's some of the lake people like to have their same name on their road, so.
Right, so there is in that option in that, it's up to the town as far as any road signing, like street signs and that. The town can definitely, I've seen it done 2 ways, do a separate sign, like on top of the other one, they maybe change color on it if they want, or they can just put it as all one, you know, 120th Street / you know, Sunset View Drive or whatever it might be. So there is that option. And that the fire numbers are still tied directly to the gridded address. So, yep.
Vincent Lane, the one example you
Yep.
just had up was most recent.
Named one. Yep.
Mr. Chair, I have a quick question. So if a town of that list of towns that didn't respond to your letter, they don't really know if they're in compliance or not with this grid system unless you do an assessment and, right?
Right. I mean, eventually in that, it'd be nice to do everything countywide, you know, and that. So I mean, and that we got a lot on our plate right now. And so I
So you don't
can't
want us
even
to send
really
you
take, and
anymore?
I can't go and gain new business or whatever
Okay.
you want to call it, or new work. And that's with it right now. So, and that, but when we get caught up at that point, you know, then I could see that the county would reach out again with just another letter saying, hey, are you interested in this at all?
So they could get on the waiting list if they wanted to.
Yeah, that's what they're basically doing right now.
So, I mean, over the last few years, literally, you've changed hundreds of lake addresses around the county.
Yep.
Once they're done, is there any blowback?
And that, no, it's been really good. That's why I said, and I didn't realize that our process and our notifications were flawed. Because when we do a notification, it's a rural address change letter that goes out, talks about emergency services. Here's your existing address, here's your new address, and then they've got 6 months to take and transition over to that new address. And that, so it's not like it's immediate. What I actually tell people, you know, and that if you're gonna be ordering new checks, if you're gonna be planning a party for 6 months from now, use your new address for that kind of stuff. As far as your normal deliveries, your bank accounts and stuff, at least wait until you get your new fire number sign installed out in front. And usually 4 to 5 months from when you receive that letter before you really start changing over some of that easier stuff to change. And that, because then that gives the Google, the Bings, and that time to update their system in case somebody's using that. So, and there's a whole big notification process that we go through. We notify Google, we notify Polk, you know, Lakeland, that. So all those we're trying to take care of on our end as well.
So one more, so then on the new ones, you're making them correct. So like in Osceola, if there's 20 new houses,
Correct.
you're making
Yep.
them the right way.
Yeah, so the
So
numbers
people
that
know
I've
that.
said here, and that's not all the address changes that we've done. I mean, we do them in that little sporadic here and there, because anytime that there's a new address that's maybe on one of those shared driveways that doesn't comply, and that we change that whole thing so that we don't compound our issues, you know, and that going forward, like what's been done for the last 40 years. And that, or if there's no address, if it goes from 700 to 702, and I need an even number in between, and at that point, then we have to look at that road or that area and say, okay, what is the minimum number of addresses we can change to make this comply? If it's 2 addresses, that's what we change. If it's 20 addresses, we have to change 20. So, and there's been quite a few of them out on Deer Lake and stuff on the south end, and that unfortunately in the last couple of years, we're like 30, 35 and that, and those are not in this number. So yeah, there's been hundreds of addresses. I'll be very honest with you in that after you explain to them, especially with what has happened lately and that as far as EMS responders, there's not a huge pool of those people that want to come and do that kind of work anymore. And so people are very understanding that, you know, people might be coming and responding and that to their call from outside of their normal area, you know, whether it's a brand new sheriff's department member and that's maybe from, you know, California, or whether it's somebody from Burnett County and that EMS coming down, so.
I think it's important for us as a board to put our faith in these people and keep our nose out of it, more or less. Because when we give in and make change, all it does is add confusion. So, I mean, I think we just need to let them do their job and try not to change things unnecessary that make it worse on them. I hate to be the devil's advocate, but I mean.
Yeah, I mean, I gotta give Jill and her staff credit. We were over there last week for tours. First time I've ever been in their dispatch area. They had 2 people on staff for the hour that I was there. And then I think they had 3 or 4 different calls going. And that during that time, and like I said, like with these A characters and B characters, if you type in an address and there's an A or a B associated with it, red flags that are actually orange flags in their system. Well, now they have to go back, ask the person, okay, are you an A, are you a B, are you C? You know, so that's all taking time and they're typing in comments, what the call is about and everything. They got enough going on that they don't need to figure out what kind of address it is, so.
Anybody else have anything? Well, okay. I'm sure we'll see you again.
All right, thanks, Jay.
Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, number 15, I have no confirmations. Administrator.
Yes, I do. For the local emergency planning committee, we have reappointments of 3 experienced members. Greg Marston, Dave Hanch, and Tim Strobush. And then the other appointment I have is Tim Lau, who's been the chairman of the BOA for several years. He is being reappointed as well with your approvals.
Need a motion to approve.
Second.
Made and seconded. Any comment? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. County board report. The only thing I have is that Sharon Kelly is leaving us. It's her last meeting. She's moving out of her district and we have some interested parties. We have 3 people that have expressed interest. We've formed there will be a committee of 4 of us that are going to decide who we're going to appoint. And we'll be doing that in the next week or 2. There's no real rush at this juncture, but should be a hard one to replace anyway, so we're going to take our time.
Who's on that committee?
Me, John.
Russ.
Russ is, she's Russ and Vince.
So the chair, vice chair, and second vice chair.
Okay, and we have it being lined up there. They've been contacted and responding and good. Really. Okay. County administrators report.
Okay, quick update. Act 216, if you recall that, where the county can sell tax deed properties, but Act 216 from the state said you could only take what was your tax deficit plus any fees. Supreme Court ruling recently made in Minnesota upheld a law or that similar rule. So at this point, the county or the WCA is looking at the ramifications and will be making recommendations to us. We'll be talking about our own tax deed properties the next few months in the committee session. But by then we'll know more about what things like how much can we charge as fees. We'll get back interest and also what about liens on the property. So still some questions that need to be answered there. And so we'll be doing that, and you'll hear more later this summer. County sales tax continues to exceed 22 levels. We're up 6.8% through May. That's a good sign. That helps us. Also, you have a handout in front of you. You want to hold that up, Tracy? The Polk County Land Information and UW Stevens Point are putting on a workshop for planning and zoning officials on July 13th from 6 to 8 p.m. at Brow Time. It'll introduce government officials to tools to help them make land use decisions. So all of you may wish to attend, and others in the villages and the towns and so on will be attending as well. Broadband expansion grants, the latest round. There were only 24 given out. Polk County received 2 of them. And that's really good news for those gaps. Remember the yellow areas on our maps? Those areas are being hit a little bit. Northwest Communications will receive $550,000 from the state to expand fiber optic cable in the town of Beaver. And then Lakeland Communications will receive $336,000 to expand fiber in Deer Lake and Loveless Lake areas. So that is a good sign. Pardon? What? Well, that's an older, yeah. Malia wants to make sure her area is covered, so. Finally, shared revenue. We've heard a little bit about that. It appears that the shared revenue plan has been adopted and signed by the governor today. Polk County will receive an additional $566,000 in 2024. Yeah, we're certainly happy to have those, but keep in mind that's under half of what we expected. So the money kept shrinking. And when you think about inflation, how we've been hit on recent healthcare costs, as well as some other things, you know, our budget will still be a challenge this year, but we're certainly happy to get the $566,000, most of which will be targeted per the state requirement toward law enforcement, emergency services, public works, and transportation. That's all I have.
Can I ask a question? Did we ever hear anything more about Golden Age Manor, that deficit? I mean, we had, you know, didn't we have a resolution or a?
Yes, well, a lobbying resolution to say make, you know, give back to the rural counties. I don't have the specifics on that. I know that in the state budget, they do have funds going toward county nursing homes. But Don, do you have any at this point? We just got this and we're digging into all the details. We're sorting through the legal language of what came out from the state. So.
Anybody else?
For those that go to this, do we sign up through the county or is the registration and $20 on us?
We'll take, if you're interested, Jason secured a code for any elected officials who want to attend, and so you can attend for free, but you'll just need to let me or Jason know if you're interested. There's a meal included too.
That's why I want to go.
Any supervisors have anything? Go ahead.
I'll go quick. I know everybody wants to go. Last Wednesday, I was invited to a demonstration of the alum treatment on Big Round Lake. And it's probably one of the most interesting meetings I've ever been to. It was very interesting.
Anybody else? Supervisor have any comments?
We'll be going to the forward Patterson County meetings now in July, starting July 7th, and we have some resolutions and presented for shared revenue, shared with you.
I surely want to thank Sharon for her services so far, and we're looking for spots for her. You know, we know she has ambition. We'll find something for you. Go ahead.
My like day is this weekend. Also, didn't we fix the air conditioning?
Thank you.
I did check. It was we could not turn it on remotely tonight. We didn't realize it goes off in the evening. I text Mo during the meeting and he got back to me and said he's working on it tomorrow morning. So hopefully next month we'll get this thing cooled off.
Tomorrow morning we'll be back. Yeah, till 9.
Move to adjourn.
Motion made to adjourn.
Second.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.